All right, what is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Mets Weekly Podcast. We are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to discuss the latest news and rumors all off-season long in Mets land. But before we do that, I want to remind everyone to hit the subscribe button to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel for weekly episodes of our show that are now recorded live every Monday night, typically at 7 p.m. Eastern time. For those of you watching or listening on playback in the future, you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. For those of you in the live chat right now, we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns, all that great stuff. You feel like you're being ignored, you're not being ignored, you're just being starred throughout the show. We'll try to blow up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. And some may be saved for viewer questions at the end of the show. Follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok for future content over there. And for our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of new episodes that go up at 9 a.m. the following day of recording. So without further ado, let's get into episode number 103. And we have just surpassed the threshold as to where it is now free agency in the offseason, which is the most fun part as to where you have the most moving the most moving players as of right now. You have tons of guys on the free agent market. This is quite a deep free agent market when it comes to overall talent. Of course, we know we've got the big names out there that I'm sure the Mets will be attached to as well. We've already talked about many of them. We have a few that the Mets have been mentioned with this week, and we'll get into them. But Frank, I will go to you. Obviously, not really much to talk about on the field right now, unless you're looking at, winter league play or, fall league or whatever it is. But right now, it looks like the Mets are looking to pounce on a lot of these top targets on the market, and hopefully it comes of something and we can add it to the roster.
Yeah, I want to start by saying happy Veterans Day to everyone who served, and we definitely thank everyone who's made the ultimate sacrifice. But for the Mets, it's kind of tough now with these offseason rumors. I feel like ever since the Steve Cohen regime, we've seen that literally any elite player, so to speak, any top tier player, they're always linked to the Mets. Every single offseason since the Steve Cohen regime. And most of the time, the Mets don't end up with them. And sometimes we don't know how much, if any, real interest there actually was from the Mets, or if it's just agents linking their clients to the Mets. So I feel like that's kind of the first thing that needs to be sorted out, is like how much of this is actually like they're interested and how much is just kind of fake. But I think overall for the Mets, with the current situation they have with all the money coming off the books, it seems like this is going to be an aggressive year for them. Like, you feel like they're going to end up with some marquee guy. How many of them, which one it might be, that remains to be seen, because as we always say, it takes two to tango. Like, it has to be a mutual agreement. So we'll see who it ends up being, but it's exciting knowing that you're going to walk away with something really good. And I feel like that's definitely the exciting part as a Met fan. It's just a matter of, okay, well, who is it going to be? And as I said the first time, but like, this whole offseason is being held up by one guy that we talked about a lot last episode, and we're going to keep talking about till he signs. But once he makes his move, then everything else will fall into play, and then you'll kind of know where everyone else is going. Because once that sweepstakes are decided with how much has to be committed, now everyone can make their true offseason plan.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this market right now, it pretty much had all the holdup when it came with somebody by the name of Shohei Ohtani last year. And once that happened, it started to flood a lot better as compared to what we're seeing right now. We've seen a few players sign here and then. I'm pretty sure the biggest one is probably like Michael Wacha staying with the Royals. So, congratulations to him on his deal. Of course, him being a former Met, obviously that hits really close to home. But when it comes to the overall offseason, we all know that this is the most exciting time for our third mic right here. Andrew, I know that you are, chomping at the bit right now for some news. We have been working on some videos behind the scenes. You guys will see one of them tomorrow at 6:30 tomorrow. It will be out. But Andrew, how's the feeling right now in this very young part of the offseason? What do you think?
Yeah, I think obviously there's some leverage ploys for at least one of the guys I feel like we're going to talk about. I think the other one, maybe there's some more genuine possibility. But again, this is what the early off season is. Just, okay, let's see if I can get a markets agents trying to get their markets set up for their clients. Say, hey, maybe if I know I got an aggressive one, maybe if I can get one of these big fish just to dip their toe in a little bit, maybe I can get them those extra couple of dollars, or maybe that extra year on the contract. We're also seeing some, to most fans, wild rumors set by whatever insiders you want to look at, or just not informative pieces, more suggested pieces. And maybe there is, again, down the line, things would have to be changed, but ideas that are stupid at some maybe we can talk about in future content and videos and streams. But again, this is kind of the fun, not the fun part, obviously the winter meetings is obviously the most fun, but for maybe the planning of, okay, how active a team's going to be is by how active you see their name linked to players. Yes, the Mets and the Dodgers, the Yankees are different because they're linked to everybody. But some of those other smaller teams, you're like, okay, maybe there is a little smoke to this one. That one could make a little sense. And again, we're still waiting for. I don't even think so. Soto being the biggest dominant. I'm just kind of waiting for the first major pitcher. Walk is different because again, that's a back end, maybe mid-end starter. I'm kind of waiting for that first kind of pitcher, or, trades that we also have the non-tender deadline coming up too. So that could also add more free agents to the list. Well, that's coming up, I think, in next week. Is it 25th?
22nd.
The non-tender deadline?
22nd.
22nd. And it was at some point next week. So you get more free agents added to the list, which is more fun because then you see guys like Bellinger in past years or Kyle Schwarber, where you can be like, ooh, you didn't expect him to test the market, and not maybe it was a guy you had on your trade list. Now you don't got to trade for him. Now you can just give him cash. So again, there's still multiple layers. Obviously, the qualifying offer, everyone most likely declining them. We still haven't seen that deadline yet. That's at some point this week. So again, it's a lot of stupid steps to get fully in free agency, but obviously we are technically in free agency with still some smaller dominoes still left to fall.
Yeah, I mean, if we can go over to the chat, of course, because we love to hear your guys' opinions as well. Darren Rivera coming in saying LGM, absolutely. Carlos saying, what's up? Of course, we have some other people in this chat here who are asking some questions that we'll get into later. But Explosive, what's going on? Evil Zilla is also in here. Henry Del Valle, I think that's how you say it. I'm not sure if that's correct, but you know what? We're just going to go with it. And if I said it wrong, we're just going to call you Henry. Anyways, but of course, when I look at this offseason right now, of course, it's very young and we have not gotten to the winter meetings. That's pretty much the meat of everything that goes on. But we're not really looking at it from, who's going to go where and what's going to happen. Because we are not going to see that many destinations be resolved this early, but we're also starting to see what actually comes of substance. And it's not just really of me saying, well, we have these fake Mets accounts trying to say that they have sources when they don't. But when you actually see some of these reliable people talking about their market and things like that, which is where we did get the confirmation of the first guy we're going to talk about in a second, but you also get to see kind of how this market pans out. We have the drawing interest and things like that, of how these dominoes kind of fall. And we know that the Mets have been attached to many, and I mean many, many names the last 2 weeks since this offseason has started. But you just don't know where the substance actually does come from. And not to mention, it's a little bit more on your heels. When is it actually going to happen? Because we have seen, like Frank said at the beginning here, a lot of this stuff has gone on behind closed doors. So you don't know where direction that these things are going to go, especially with David Stearns. We don't know, he's always been an opportunistic type of guy where he looks at a lot of different stuff on the market. So we'll see where they kind of narrow things down here. And I'm really interested to see this because of the amount of flexibility David Stearns now has for the first time under the Mets regime. Frank, you wanted to
Yeah,
add
I was
something?
gonna say one of the things with Stearns that's been different with him with the Mets is that I don't know if it's he sets up smoke screens or just that maybe a little bit of both that he doesn't want leaks. So you think of like with
Yeah.
Jesse Winker and
Mhm.
like the guys the Mets got to trade deadline, they were not rumored. Like they were not talked about. Like we talked about Florida or we talked about like this guy, that guy. We never really like we speculated Winker. We said, hey, Winker's a good fit, but there was no report from like a national source that was like, oh, Mets are talking about Jesse Winker. Oh, there's a dialogue happening there. It has not happened under Stearns regime. So you may see some guys that the Mets are linked to, but then don't be surprised if you see the Mets sign somebody who wasn't talked about. So I feel like that's one
Yeah.
of the things I have liked is like this just kind of thing of like, again, we don't really know exactly what is going on. And that's the smart way to do business. I mean, don't let it get out to the public, keep your leverage and just kind of do it behind closed doors and make smart, sound decisions. I mean, that's what Stearns has made a career of. And I don't expect anything like that to change now. I do think that the man above him, the certain guy, he is going to be like kind of pounding the desk for as far as like, listen, Stearns, I know this isn't generally how you would normally do business, but I'm telling you that this one player that plays the outfield, like we need to give him a crazy contract. And Stearns like, okay, boss man, I'll do that. But other than that, I feel like he is going to be like very reasonable and logical with like a lot of the different things that he's going to be offering.
I mean, listen, what I believe here is that we also have these certain levels of connections, because I do believe that when you look at this free agent market, such as the two players that we're going to probably zero in on today, who are on the left side of the screen and also in our headlines today, there is a David Stearns connection between both of these players. So it's definitely possible. We have seen him bring in some guys who he has had connections to in the past. Let's not forget the Tyrone Taylor and Adrian Hauser trade as well. We've seen also some guys they brought in even already this offseason. What was it? Chris Davinsky, somebody that he was connected to all the way back in Houston. So there are some of these players that seem like, these, disciples from other teams with David Stearns in the past as well. We've seen him sign other guys as well, like, from big to little. Let's not forget the Ben Gamble edition as well. He's a big guy that was in Milwaukee. I mean, there's a lot of
Big
different
guy,
guys
okay.
that have been like, listen, there's a lot of guys that have been mixed in from Stearns' time in Milwaukee, some in Houston. So we're seeing a little bit of those players. And this is definitely one of the main topics today of guys who are connected to David Stearns, some moves that he has made, guys that he knows very well. And I do want to start off with that first guy that has been probably the centerpiece of this week regarding Mets land, if you're on Twitter. Now, we did have a source by the name of Mike Rodriguez, I believe, at first report something like this about somebody like Willy Adames, who is apparently being connected to the Mets during this week. Not many people took it as of substance because, again, we know our beat writers in New York, our Mets beat writers, that usually they come forward and they bring a little bit more light to it. Then the next day or the day after, we had Mike Mayer talk about it, who is one of our main beat writers as well at Metsmerized, I believe. And, he has been, on top of it, ever since. He has, very deep sources. He knows what he's talking about. So I do want to get into Willy Adames because I do think this is an interesting topic you can talk about. It's been something that a lot of Mets fans have been talking about, for the past week. And I think that I definitely do think that there is a fit here. I think that there, is a benefit. There's a little bit of doubt in my mind. We'll see where everyone's mind is at currently. But when we look at somebody like Willy Adames, let's go right into the profile. Now, of course, Willy Adames last year and for his entire career has played shortstop. That has been his primary position. He played a little bit of second base a few years ago, but nothing of, great sample. He's a shortstop. You may notice that the Mets have a shortstop and he's going to be here for a long time. So if the Mets were to bring in somebody like Willy Adames, that would mean that he would move over to third base. Very similar to what happened with Carlos Correa when that completely fell through. But it would be Willy Adames moving over to third base, especially with the Mets having a lot of second base options down the line. Now, if you were to look at the season that Willy Adames had, it was a great season to have in a contract year because he's going to be one of the main attractions on the free agent market. Of course, through 688 plate appearances, was healthy all year, definitely had some injury concerns back when he was in Tampa. Of course, slash line 251, 331, 462. He was second among all batters in the National League behind Shohei Ohtani for home runs and runs batted in. Of course, quality of contact was great in the top 25%. And against right-handed pitching, which was a majority of his ABs, of course, slashing 271, 340, 511 in those 509 plate appearances of those 688. We know that he is a sure-handed defensive player, but as for when it comes to shortstop, that's not going to be a factor. 6'1", 29 years old, 219 pounds. I mean, whatever you want to look at it, he's a righty. Got on base a lot last year. Discipline was a lot better as compared to what it was beforehand. So when it comes to Willy Adames, he does kind of go into the formula a little bit differently as compared to other teams. Like I said, Francisco Lindor is your starting shortstop, and he will be until the rest of his Mets career. If they were to bring in somebody like Willy Adames, it will have to be the fact that he will play third base. Very similar to what would have happened with Carlos Correa when that deal fell through, as I just said. The only problem that I look at it here with is that Willy Adames has played 0 career innings at third base in his major league career. I'm not sure about the minors. In his major league career, he has not played a single inning at third base. So I think this is very interesting because, again, Willy Adames blossomed into a great player this year, and he does have the Stearns connection. Frank, I will start with you. As for looking at the market of Willy Adames, it's a little unprecedented moving him to third base as compared to other markets with other teams with Willy Adames, but definitely something to think about in terms of the Stearns connection into this offseason.
Yeah, I definitely think that, like, generally speaking, like you said, he is a solid player. He provided good offense, particularly from the power department as a middle infielder, like being able to hit over 30 home runs. It definitely shouldn't go unnoticed. But like you mentioned, with the point of him not playing any third base in his major league career, I'll go one step further. He's only played 10 games in his major league career at second base, and that was in 2018. Yes. So even if you say, oh, well, they're not going to put him at third, they'll just put him at second because he's a middle infielder. He still doesn't have much experience there either. So for me with Adames, just with this particular Mets group, I just don't see the best fit. And I feel like when I look at Adames overall as a player and I say, okay, what does he do well? He's not a particularly great defender at his primary position at shortstop. Now, maybe third base be a little easier, second base might be a little easier, but still, he's inexperienced there. Not great base running, so he's not really a fast guy. So I don't have that as a tool that I could put in my back pocket. And I just think overall, when you look at, okay, we're talking about free agency, another player that is going to be 30 years old next season. So you're already making that, we talk about like long-term investment, you're paying for when he's already 30. So you already know that, like we talk about first 4 years, probably pretty good. And then you're going to see that decline. So you already have to be very wary of how many years you're offering him. But again, when I talk about specific fit to this Mets team, if I'm looking at, okay, he's an offensive player and I'm going to put him at third base. To be honest, when I look at the season he had this past year, I like what my third baseman did offensively that I already have on this team in Mark Vientos. I don't think that Adames is the guy that I'm moving Vientos around the diamond for. Now, I see people in the chat talking about like Adames versus Alonso. And I agree. Like, I would just stick with Alonso. Like, it's a much more natural fit. Like, Mets have opening at first base with Alonso, not a free agent right now. So you just put Alonso back there, did as a Met, fine. Because when I look at Adames as well offensively, not an 800 OPS guy. He's not like he had his power numbers, but overall not an elite offensive player. So I just think that, again, we're talking about like the fit. I just don't know why I know the kind of contract he's going to command from other teams as a shortstop. So why would I give that to him to put him at a position he doesn't belong if I'm going to be paying for offense and he's not all that great offensively? And like we talked about with this particular free agent market, with the Juan Soto, with the Santander, with the Teoscar Hernandez, I just feel like there are other really good offensive players that fit this particular Mets team much better than Adames does. So I just think overall, like, if you want to say, oh, I signed Adames and I moved Vientos to first base. Okay, well, now you got two guys in positions that they don't belong. So I just don't think that he's the guy who's worth moving my team around and just having an unnatural fit. Like with Correa, it made sense because Correa is that good offensively that you want to put him at third, fine. And Vientos had not blossomed yet. So it made much more sense then. But right now, this team, it was not the move I would do. He's not who I would prioritize with what's available at the beginning of the offseason. Again, I like him as a player, but not for the fit of this team.
I mean, listen, when you look at Willy Adames, I think at face value, one thing that I do look at when the Mets are bringing in bats, because we haven't really seen Stearns' approach with like primary bats. Last year, they did not bring in really like anyone besides JD Martinez at the last second buzzer. Yeah, Harrison Bader brought in, Tyrone Taylor brought in, some other little pieces, but nothing crazy. When you look at somebody like Willy Adames, to me, at first glance, looks like to me, oh, well, it's another right-handed bat. And again, I'm not one to do the lefty righty and put the full investment into that, but there is so many right-handed hitters in this Mets lineup that you're like, okay. And especially when you're talking about these other guys, and the Mets lineup and the struggles, something that Frank goes after all the time regarding the offense of them not being able with the slider in the outside corner, a lot of breaking stuff, a lot of chasing. And that's where I look at it with somebody like Willy Adames. Then I go into it a little bit deeper. That was not the case. He destroyed right-handed pitching last year. Not to mention, he also is one of the best offensive players against breaking balls in all of baseball, believe it or not. So I was like, okay, well, this is actually a possible fit to improve the offense. As for overall positional value, I will actually get into that after Andrew speaks, because I just realized that Andrew has to speak and he's not just sitting here as an audience member. My bad. Andrew, I'll go to you regarding Willy Adames. What do you think about this as a possible addition? Because it seems like the hottest thing over the last week for Mets fans.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the Rodriguez tweet, and we're like, all right, bullshit. And then we obviously got the confirmation, and we're like, okay. He wasn't, again, a type of guy I would have thought, okay, that makes sense. That would have been like, obviously we went Soto, we may look Santander, the offensive, like those are guys we penciled in, okay, those are targets that make sense for this roster. I do like that we are still trying to fill, like, again, obviously most people want to bring back Alonso. Well, again, we know my opinion on it, but yet they're still looking at third base defensively, which that is something to be important. Let's say if Pete's gone, you do shift Mark there. If you're going to replace him, at least give me a good defender at third base. We saw that Jim Bowden interview, which again, Jim Bowden is full of shit most of the time. But he did say, again, it's about the next guy we're going to talk about. But there was a line in that if you told me that David Stearns would say that, it would make sense. That he would allow Alonso to walk because he wants the defensive third baseman. So that is like, yes, is Jim Bowden always full of shit? Yes. But if you told me David Stearns said that, that's something I can believe. One, David Stearns believes it and would actually say. So yes, he does fit yes, last year wasn't great, but the last 2 years, he was like in the 99th and 96th percentile OA. I know it's a shortstop. Who cares? I do like that they are still looking at maybe turning shortstops into third basemen. The San Diego Padres have 5 shortstops, and everybody, all these good teams. The Dodgers have 3 shortstops on the roster. I don't really care about, he hasn't played. Give me a bunch of shortstops. They can play everywhere. Like, they're the most usually the most athletic guy on the team. If you play shortstop, you could probably play third base. Look at A-Rod. He didn't. There obviously are. Jazz Chisholm, same thing now with the Yankees. He'd go to third base. He was really good. This isn't like, oh, I'm taking him at shortstop. And again, it's a slight angle change, but it's different. Besides the point, he's not a guy that I was like very intrigued with. But again, he has that Stearns connection of going out and trading for this player, and giving up some good pitching for it. Does it make sense? No. Is it my top option for a third baseman? No. And the term is going to be similar with Alonso, which again, you know me, I don't like term. Again, unless you're a superstar. He is not a superstar. I wouldn't even call him a star. I think he's an all-star caliber player. Like, there's 3 tiers. He's probably a tier 3 player. Like, he's a good player. If he's on my team, I'd love to have him on my team. I'm just not giving him 7 years, and I do think the factor, if we talked about this in the opening, this is probably a leverage play for the Dodgers and the Braves, because those are the teams that need shortstops, even the Giants, who make sense needing a shortstop, that this is, he's a Boris guy, correct? I would think. Is he a Boris guy?
Adames?
I'm not sure about that one.
Bregman's a Boris guy, correct?
Bregman's a Boris guy.
Yes.
But even still,
I don't know about Adames,
most
but
agents,
I can give you that answer right now.
Yeah,
but you can keep talking.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
But yeah, most agents are going to obviously use the Mets, Dodgers, and Yankees as the leverage play. And if Stearns is in there, you have obviously that connection. It makes sense. Again, if let's say the offers are similar, let's say the Mets put that offer that Rodriguez put, and let's say the Braves did the same thing. He's probably picking the Braves play.
CAA.
He's not
CAA.
Boris, huh? Yeah. Oh, a good buddy Brody. But Leon Rose as well. Huh. But I do think if, let's say, there's 2 teams offering the same deal, he's going to pick the team that he can play shortstop with. So unless, the Braves, the Giants, those teams that need a shortstop desperately aren't involved, then I do think that let's say Bo Bichette goes to 1. Let's say what other shortstops are available? Figure them out. But let's say 1 gets Bo, there's another trade to get that one. Then maybe the suitors go down. I think it's a higher possibility. But I do think this is kind of a leverage play from the agent side. To say, hey, the Mets are involved. Again, if Mike Rodriguez say it's an offer, I'd be genuinely shocked if there is a true offer. I think there could be interest, but if there's an offer, I would be shocked. I doubt it. I highly doubt there's an offer. I think there's interest.
There's no way.
There's no way that they're putting a contract in, not even December yet. And again, qualifying offers aren't.
Yeah.
Did he get a qualifying offer, by the way?
He did not, no.
Did he get a qualifying offer? Okay, so then that one maybe does make a little. Maybe that does make a little, but besides the point, I doubt he has an actual contract. He's just not, again, like Frank said, it's not a fit. I think there are better shortstops that I would put at third base who could be on the trade market. Again, that's just me. I am very, in free agent market, it's Soto, it's Burnes, and everybody else for the right price, sure. I'm not overpaying, especially where there's cheaper options and maybe better options on that trade market that I would pivot to. It's an interesting option, but again, I think at the end of the day, he probably ends up on a shortstop needy team compared to a team that would be like, hey, you could come here, we'll give you a bag, but you're playing a position you really don't want to play.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at it from the standpoint of just Willy Adames himself, I personally believe that his market and what he's going to market himself as is a shortstop. The only way that you're going to actually convince him to play third base is to pay him even more. And that was the situation with Carlos Correa, where you're like, okay, fine, let's give him all of this money to play third base. Absolutely, because he's Carlos Correa. But then when you get to somebody like Willy Adames, who is a good player, and I do think that he's a lot better of a hitter than the sub 800 OPS that everybody's saying he is. But when it comes to somebody like Willy Adames, I'm not going into that shortstop market when I know that I already have one of the top in the shortstop market, as to where, like, okay, I'm just going to pay 2 shortstops, and one of them is going to give me the value of a third baseman, also the value of a third baseman that has never played third base before. So it just doesn't make sense to me. And it doesn't seem like a decision that David Stearns would do. Like, it doesn't seem like a David Stearns decision to me, because with him, he likes his defensive stalwarts at defensive stalwart positions. We've seen him at shortstop. We've seen him go up the middle with center field with guys like Bader and Taylor. We've seen him, also hold on to the reins a lot with Mark Vientos and his defense at third base until they finally said, you know what, Beatty's terrible. Let's move on and have Vientos play third base. So let's not also forget how hesitant it was to get JD Martinez because of him just being just a bat. So there is definitely some emphasis on defense that David Stearns has, and it was a little bit weird to see something like Willy Adames when you already have an MVP caliber shortstop in Francisco Lindor here, for the next 8 years. I don't even know how long he signed down for 8 years, 7 years, something like that. So he's going to be here for a long time, in case you guys didn't know. But when it comes to, everybody else's opinion on this one, very mixed in this chat. If you guys haven't voted on the poll, make sure to do it already. Asking you guys if you would sign Willy Adames to play third base. And I made sure to say that he has 0 career innings at third base. 36% of you are saying yes. 41% of you are saying no. 23% of you are 50-50. So there's definitely a close margin for all 3 of those choices. And going into the chat here, Goomba coming in saying, why move Vientos' position and lose Pete for Adames? Am I missing something? Seems dumb AF. Keep Pete already. This is silly. He is our guy. Now, listen, I think it's very easy enough to say that Pete Alonso should stay, especially with what he has been able to accomplish in a Mets uniform. And we've talked about this before of how you shouldn't take that for granted of what they do in a Mets uniform, not just because of the free agency signings that come over here and they're not as good, but also the New York market where there's a lot of eyes on you. And we've seen Pete Alonso do that fairly well. The way that I look at it with the Mets, and he's our guy, and this, again, we've talked about this before. We haven't won anything with our guy to just completely justify keeping him here forever. Do I think that it makes sense to keep Alonso long-term? And if you want him to be here long-term, absolutely. Personally, my mindset on this, and we've talked about this already, I'm fine with or without somebody like Pete Alonso, because I understand why they would want to move on from him, and I understand why they would want to keep him. When it comes to Adames, it's very weird in that sense because, we also have Carlos Ortiz coming in here saying, can Adames even play in New York? We don't know that. We have seen him play in Tampa and we've seen him play in Milwaukee. We also do have this other factor that I want to clue in before you guys answer anything regarding Pete Alonso, because we know that they are very comparable, both of them being 29 years old. But when it comes to the whole position that you are in right now, with Willy Adames, we know that if they were to bring in Willy Adames, most likely Jesse Winker will not be back. Just going to tell you that right now. For those of you who want Winker back from his amazing postseason that he had, Winker and Adames definitely do not get along. Maybe they do find a way to get along in one way, because we saw, Garrett Cole and Josh Donaldson get along, and we all saw how great Josh Donaldson worked out for the Yankees. But when it comes to this situation right here, we know that bad blood is very, very fresh because they were going at it in the postseason. So it's not like this was from years and years ago where they have a history or whatever and they have had time to heal it. This was happening during this postseason in the wild card round. These guys were chirping at each other, and one of them threatened to meet them out in the parking lot. And I guess nothing really transpired there. And I do think that attitude from at Willy Adames, I think he would do fine in that New York type of market. I think that there's that type of, that mental toughness that he does have. I'm not worried about that. But if you're a big Jesse Winker fan, you might be out of luck if they sign somebody like Willy Adames. Is there anything you guys want to add regarding this? Because again, something like, this whole thing with like Adames, losing Pete for Adames, which is kind of the whole situation, because that Mark Vientos is going to have one of third base or first base when it comes to next year, or maybe DH as well, possibly. I don't know what else you guys want to add, but that's also another conversation to have.
Yeah, I think overall we've talked about that. Like a lot of their prospects in general are infielders. So like you
Yeah.
look at right now Acuna. I keep saying like I want to see him get a shot. When Ronnie's healthy, he's somewhere in the infield. Viento's somewhere in the infield. The Mets' number one prospect, despite our opinions on him, he is an infielder. So I think
Yeah.
also when you talk about committing a long term contract to Adames to play the infield, it's like you have so many guys already, like we said, long term infield that it's just like trying to figure out where everybody fits in the puzzle is not quite clear. Whereas like with Alonso at first, it's just a much more like sensible fit where it just fits better. Or just put Alonso at first, everyone just kind of stay where they're at. I just think that like I understand, like you said, I understand want to move Vientos to another position, but I just don't think Adames, even though like Aaron said, like he's a good player, but I just don't think he's the player that I'm moving my whole team around and I'm just going to kind of change everything just to accommodate for him. Like I don't think he's that good to cause that. And my
No.
one other thing with Adames, you mentioned about like his hitting profile and his strengths and weaknesses. I feel like you could say something similar for JD Martinez and maybe lesser extent to Starling Marte, where it's like they had a certain identity as a hitter. Now they come to Eric Chavez, and then all of a sudden they're maybe not the same player. So I do wonder, like, trying to change his approach, new ballpark, like it's not always a 1-for-1 where it's like, oh, he was really good against breaking balls in Milwaukee. Like it doesn't always just translate to the Mets. So that's something I'd also be wary of. Is like I feel like just in general, it's a safer bet to go to a left-handed bat or a switch hitting bat, where I know just in general with the particular kinds of breaking balls the Mets are struggling on right outside corner, it's just a lot easier for a left-hander to hit those pitches. Just general rule of thumb, like if we're going like 50-50. So I feel like it's just a better fit to try to get a left-handed bat. If we're trying to improve our offense, like we said, it just feels like Soto, Santander, these guys are just much more natural fits for what the Mets need, especially because we talk about how crowded the infield is. The outfield could use more help. So I feel like they should try to be looking for an outfielder to be their offensive source of power, not an infielder.
Yeah, and I'm seeing somebody in the chat. This is actually really good. Adames is not like A-Rod for the Yankees. We talk about that. We can also talk about that. And, regardless of how we feel about A-Rod is originally a shortstop, and they moved him over to third base because the Yankees had a bat such as Alex Rodriguez, who, whether it was legit or not when he did that, he was, what was it?
But
He was one of
A-Rod,
the youngest guys to get to
and that's the
400
other thing
home
too,
runs or
is
500 home
that
runs. Yeah.
A-Rod already won Gold Gloves as shortstop. Adames is like a okay defender at short. Like he's
Yeah.
not great. So I just again, that's another thing where I don't
Adames
think
is
that like
shorthanded, I would say.
yeah, he's
He's a
short-handed, but we're talking
shorthanded
about like
defender.
rate.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about the concerns of Vientos' range. Like I just don't think that putting Adames in a non-natural position is just gonna be like this great thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, now our defense is so good. Now we have Adames playing third.
And
Like
that's why I'm like, okay, this doesn't sound like a Stearns
it
thing. This
doesn't.
just doesn't sound like it to me. I don't know. Maybe we're wrong and Adames is a Met by the winter meetings. But when it comes to looking at something like Willy Adames in that sense, another thing that I do bring up in, I think it was one or two of our videos, I'm pretty sure that we recorded the other day. Andrew, you guys can go check those out in the future. One of them will be out tomorrow at 6:30. But the one mindset that I do have with this, and a lot of people are going to disagree because of the impact bat that leaves, but this is how I would treat this. And listen, I know it sounds like I'm using a bit, I'm using a huge, I'm giving you a big gap here, and I think that and I'll turn it to Andrew afterwards because I think that's kind of the way he would do it as well. Here's how I go, and maybe it is taking it a little bit of a step further. If Pete Alonso ends up leaving, I am not going to replace him in any sense. I would move Vientos to first base because I believe that he deserves that ability to do so. The only infield acquisition I am doing is to either bring back Jose Iglesias or bring in another veteran middle infielder to actually be somebody who could push one of these young guys, and pretty much the infield belongs to the kids. I know everyone doesn't want to see that, but then you look at the other factors. We have a starting rotation to fill. We have outfield to look at, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then we also have a bullpen, which we don't think that they're going to spend big in, But, those are also some roster spots that you're putting in here. And I do believe that the pitching, no matter what, it's going to be expensive. You can't just find every single bargain deal whatsoever. So when it comes to the infield, the only infield move that I personally would make is either retaining Alonso. That's it. That's all I'm doing. I'm sorry. It's Alonso stays, and you don't look to replace Alonso. You look to replace what you got from Jose Iglesias. That's it. Because one of these young guys have to take one of these spots in the infield. You have a lot of young guys that could possibly play second base. We know that Ronnie Mauricio, who knows if he's going to be ready for opening day. Maybe he starts in AAA, possibly. But then you could possibly use one of those, that veteran infielder to be, the guy to start off the season. But when it comes to, that type of look, I understand it's tough to look at, because you're like, okay, well, Pete left, so we got to replace him. When you talk about how you're looking at these from younger players, and you want to showcase it and give the leeway to have these guys play, I don't see if Pete Alonso were to leave, them just going, okay, well, let's replace him with Christian Walker. Let's bring in Alex Bregman, move Vientos to first base. I know that there's also a DH position they have to fill there too. But when it comes to the whole entire infield, I'm not focusing on first base if Pete leaves. I'm just not. I'm not paying a first baseman that isn't Pete Alonso. And I'm okay with not doing it if Pete Alonso ends up leaving. Andrew, I don't know if you feel the same way. I know that you also would like to look in the third baseman market for, trades as well. There's other things that you can look at, but if Pete Alonso goes, and we're not just going to be looking to replace that with another first baseman. I personally think I'm not on that first base market if Pete leaves. I don't know if that's how you feel.
Yeah, I've made that very clear. Again, I'm not even wanting to bring Pete back at a price. I think there's a price you set. It goes over that set price. Enjoy wherever the hell you're going to go. But yeah, and there is no replacing the bat of Pete Alonso, because there really isn't in the infield. Obviously, there's a certain outfield that I could easily replace it and upgrade from Pete Alonso, but he doesn't play in infield. On the infield side of it, I do think, and I think Frank said something in his last segment that kind of woke me up, but I think fans need to kind of wake up about saying, bringing back Pete Alonso is the safe option. That word gets teams in trouble. Well, it's safe. I know what he is. I know. When people get safe, sometimes there's not progression. That's the easiest way to regress. I'm not saying Pete Alonso is going to regress, but we've seen teams, especially teams that we all like, they could have stayed safe, and they risked it. Who knows what happens? But if you look, they're upgrade their talent level. Is it going to work? Wait and see. I do think David Stearns is going to play some things relatively safe, as he always is. The bullpen most likely is going to be the safe option, him doing that. I do think if, let's say they don't get Soto, maybe they bring back Pete. If not, let's say there's a dark world where both of them are gone. I do think he is opportunistic on the trade market. And I mean that as a way of, there's a lot of baseball teams right now who do not have a cable deal, who don't have TV deals, that they are going to be panicking, getting off potential good players on good contracts. I do, and I hope, and we've seen Stearns do it, and we've seen Cohen on lesser extents with fucking Seattle's pitchers. I don't even want to say their damn names, because one was DFA'd right away, and the other one was a fucking creative player. Besides the point, we've seen him be opportunistic. Hell, even a Correa deal. He's been and that was a free agent signing. I do think, however this offseason plays out, if it's Soto, if it's Alonso, third base, there are some interesting names on those teams losing TV deals that, again, we might never hear about it. But if I'm David Stearns, and I have, again, and let's say things don't go well, I do maybe could see them saying, all right, this team doesn't have a TV deal. They're already kind of bleeding money. They're shedding salary. Let me try to pounce on that. And I think that's the only way you're going to get that, replacing Pete Alonso if he were to walk, meaning like star power-wise. I do think he gets a defensive first third baseman if Pete leaves and move Mark to first. Again, there really isn't on the free agent market. It's like Paul DeYoung and Gio Urshela. That's why I say it's going to be via the trade market. And with those type of caliber of players, you still can rotate the kids, even though they're all midgets and they can't play third base. So it's really Ronnie's the only prospect that can play third base at his size that you could comfortably put him there. So it's really a Ronnie insurance in case point. Where we're talking about playing the kids, it's got to be at second base, and we all know who has to go for those kids to play, but nobody's going to take them. But when it comes to strictly to third base, I don't think, again, Bregman's not happening. Again, Walker, it's Alonso or bust for that. I do think he's going to get, like, again, a version of Tyrone Taylor for third base, but I wouldn't be surprised, again, if one of those teams, which that maybe is a future video that we might be uploading or recording and uploading soon, of options that can fill that. I do think there are teams and there are good players that, hell, maybe even if they maybe tack on a couple $1 million with it, makes their contracts even more appealing. But again, when it comes to this, well, Pete goes, Walker comes in, or Anthony Rizzo, which, hell, he's in the video, we'll see. No. You need some youth, but yet you still can be, you like what you have, and you want to play what you have, and you can be safe, or sometimes, you know what? I want to get crazy. I want to do something that, if it works, I can beat the Dodgers. If it doesn't, well, I set my team back. But again, there's another one. I love using all my teams. A son of a GM said, "You only get this job once." Remember that. Yes, I know Stearns has had that comfort. Stearns is very comfortable in position, unlike that other guy. But there is a lot of that. You know what? Why not? It's different in other regimes and other teams. This one's pretty comfortable. We love David Stearns. But I do think there is some opportunistic abilities and routes that he can go. Not just because Christian, it's down to Alonzo Walker, and if you want to put like Josh Bell, maybe Jock Peterson first base, like it's not that. I'm not jumping at that because that's going to call its term. I think there are cheaper, cost-controllable contracts, and maybe it's upside prospects that flopped on a certain team. That's where I think he'll pivot at third base / first base if he's going to go that route.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the way that I look at it, like I said, of bringing in like a veteran infielder, if Pete ends up walking, you move Vientos to first. Maybe you move him to, maybe you move Vientos to DH. And then maybe you do end up signing somebody like Christian Walker. But I do believe that there needs to be a veteran infielder in there that can push somebody like Ronnie Mauricio, even if they still believe in Beatty. Push somebody else there to help them get the job. We saw that happen in regards to the DH position with Mark Vientos. That happened. That was a little bit of a rarity because he had Francisco Lindor to his left. But when it comes to looking at some of these veteran guys of guys that you would go into besides somebody like Willy Adames, and I know everybody does not like the fact that Pete leaves and not replacing him with anything other than just going internal and going to Vientos when you have a DH position available as well, because we all know that JD Martinez is not coming back. But when you look at it from the standpoint of like, okay, let's get like a veteran infielder who could play maybe third and second base. Again, I could point you right out to Gio Urshela once again, somebody who can push some of these young guys. I'm not saying Gio Urshela is going to be your starting third baseman. What I'm saying is you need an older guy to push some of these younger. You need an older guy to push some of the younger guys. That's what they didn't do with Beatty last year, and that's why Beatty still sucks. Okay, I'm not saying that this would have guaranteed Beatty to be good, but he didn't have any competition in any realm of an older guy who could push them and mentor them. He wasn't going to get mentored by a guy he's the same age as Mark Vientos. Those guys are competing for those jobs, right? So when it comes to some of these older pieces, when it comes to some of these infield pieces, you need a guy there who's sure-handed defensively, who actually can give you this type of value and type of leadership that can push these types of guys. And when we talk about somebody like Jeff McNeil, McNeil doesn't even know how to rule himself, let alone mentor somebody else. I've never seen him mentor anyone in my life. He's basically just off talking to himself because he's weird. But also, Jeff McNeil's not a third baseman. And if anybody says, oh, he played third base in 2019, suck my dick, leave. This show is not for you. Anyways, but another guy you can put in here, Jorge Polanco, guys like these veteran guys. And I know it doesn't sound great, and I know it doesn't sound like these are the ideal pieces to put in here to the lineup to be the upgrade. But if you're looking to play the young guys, which I know that Stearns wants to do, that's what you have to do if Pete Alonso leaves. Not to mention, even if they keep Pete Alonso, because it's not like Pete Alonso is going to mentor a third baseman because he played third base in college, right? I think that, you still need to get that veteran infielder to replace somebody like Jose Iglesias, right? Or something like that. But again, with Mark Vientos, with somebody you can move over to first base, I get you have the DH there, but I'm not going aggressive on the infield market, such as somebody like Willy Adames. I think Willy Adames is a fine player, and if they were to bring him in, I think he would be a great addition. But when it comes to sorting out the rest of the roster, infield is not something I'm really, really pushing for, especially when you have all these young guys. I've talked about it. I don't like plugging in these young guys, but you have such a conglomerate of these infielders that it would be doing a disservice to sign one of these infielder free agents for 5 or 6 years to not try out what you have internally. If there's anything else you guys want to add regarding the infield, because I know that, Willy Adames has been some of a big picture. And I think that there is places where he does fit into this, but I still am not being that aggressive in the infield if somebody like Pete Alonso leaves, because again, I'm still hesitant to even pay Pete Alonso whatever he wants, which seems like he's rumored to want like $200 million, which personally, I ain't giving to him. I understand a lot of people love him, in the Mets fandom, but I'm not giving him $200 million after the year he just had. Frank, Andrew, anything you guys want to add?
I feel like the main key is just neither one of these guys are overpay candidates. You know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't really be breaking the bank, even though it is Steve Cohen and you have a lot of money like available right now. But I just think you shouldn't overpay either one of these guys. Neither one of them are that elite to do that. There's a couple guys that you do it for. Obviously, the big fish that's out there, you obviously overpay for him. But I think overall, like, it's not really worth it, especially, again, given the age and just the long-term concerns. And it's just like, if you have, and this kind of reminds us with Dom's, like, if you have this many question marks in year one, they become even worse in year 5 when he's not as good, So I feel like that's the thing too, is like, if he's already not a great fit now, he might be an even worse fit later on. And it's just like, then you're really just kind of like kicking yourself, like, why did we do this contract? Can we just get rid of this guy already? Like, you don't want to find yourself in one of those situations either. So I think when it comes to free agency, you have to be more careful when you're making these long-term investments to guys who are already 30. Like, you just have to be smart.
I personally, like, if I were to answer this poll that we have here, I would be in the 50-50 category, because I understand what he would provide to this team. And I do think that he would make this lineup better. But then you also have this defensive add-on to it where he's played 0 career innings at third base, because I do think he makes this lineup better offensively. Even though he is a right-handed hitter, we don't want this right-handed heavy lineup. Hopefully we go towards more left-handed bats this offseason. Of course, there's that one guy like we have been, throwing straws at this entire time that we are not going to talk about. No one talk about him right now. There is a guys out there, and then there's also a guy in Baltimore who is really good, and we've had our eyes on for years. But when it comes to a right-handed bat, it doesn't seem like he has the weaknesses of a typical right-handed bat that has been on the Mets per se offense. Let's just say that. And it seems like he adjusts pretty well to what the Mets weren't able to do all season in those righty-righty matchups. So I do think that is something that you can put out there that is good. I do think that the power for someone who does as much damage in the zone as he does, I feel like that will stay. You don't know how it's going to age, but when you're talking about a guy like Willy Adames, who doesn't rely on athleticism that much, which is the main reason why you're probably willing to move him over to third base instead of having him play shortstop, which he won't play here anyways. I think I would be 50-50 in this point, where it's not like he will be a complete stone hands defensively at third base. I wouldn't recommend it, but like, I'm just saying, overall as a player, I'm 50-50 on this possible move. I have no real recollection of it. It all has to really come down to the situation. I think money is going to be a factor here, where they're going to have to pay him extra to play third base. I don't think personally, again, with with the run prevention preaching that is done by David Stearns, I just don't think that he likes him that much to pay him that much to move him over to third base, which he has never played before. I don't know if there's anything else that you guys want to add to that point, but I think it's a thought. I think that it would help the team. Do I think that it helps the team from all dimensions? No. But it would be a good ad if that happens. Rosie saying that Stearns made it seem like Mauricio won't be ready when spring training begins. Seems like he had a lot of setbacks. Yes, there definitely was some concern regarding his health. They're definitely going to keep this take this slow with him. I think that he will be ready by spring training, but you're not going to see that much from him, and it's going to be a little bit slower in regards to that. Most likely, he will be beginning 2025 in AAA, not because of they don't have a spot for him, because they need him to get healthy, and they don't want him to just rehab while he is in the major leagues playing major league games. So that's kind of how, I kind of look at it. But we'll see what happens. We haven't really gotten the full update. Doesn't seem like he's resumed baseball activities yet. And I don't think Game for War saying, I don't think he's going to play Dominican winter ball, not even just because of the concerns of the, injury. I just don't think he's healthy enough to play it at this current moment. And I do believe, again, I'm not one of those with the exhibition of them not playing in a Mets uniform. They always get hurt. I know we had that stuff about Diaz, and we had this stuff about Mauricio, and then they both ended up getting hurt, and everyone had the concern about Marte playing in the Dominican Winter League. I mean, they have to get those reps in the off season in order to stay healthy. If they're not healthy enough, they shouldn't be on the field anyway, if they end up getting hurt in these other types of scenarios. So the infield is definitely going to be something to watch, I think, on the younger side now. I don't think that there's really that many free agents that spark interest when it comes to the Mets right now, besides somebody like Pete Alonso retaining him. When you're talking about middle infield, when you're talking about the hot corner, there are going to be questions that are going to be answered, but I think it's more internal than external at this point. To me, it doesn't make sense as to why Willy Adames would be on the Mets radar. Maybe it is more of a leverage thing. Like we've said before, we've seen the Mets with tons of free agents from the top to the middle to the even the very bottom used as a leverage horse, which I personally at this current moment is how I look at that certain outfield that's the top of the food chain right now. I personally think they're currently a leverage horse in that regard. But when it comes to Willy Adames, I think it would be a fine addition, but it's nothing that like completely game breaks anything to where you cater to it in a Correa type sense of moving him to third base, even though he doesn't have much experience there. Anything else you guys want to add regarding that? And then we'll go into, this big other free agent that's definitely a bigger fish than Willy Adames. So we also did get some rumors as well about the free agent market. Jim Bowden, we talked about it before. We've talked about him talking out of his ass before. But we definitely understand the connection, of course, when it comes to a guy like Corbin Burnes, who is going to be one of the top, if not the top pitcher on the market by far. And when it comes to somebody like Corbin Burnes, who was acquired by the Orioles in the last year of his years of control, he's going to be going to free agency. He is a Boris client. So we'll see what happens in regards to that. But when it comes to somebody like Corbin Burnes, I think we already have had that type of vision of with pitching, the connection between the Mets and Corbin Burnes regarding somebody like David Stearns. And we did see Jim Bowden take it a little bit step further. We don't know if this was an exaggeration, but he did talk about how, if David Stearns, he wants Corbin Burnes and that being his number one priority. And then the other one, of course, being Soto. And that's kind of how he's looking at it, kind of shifting off of the free agency market of Pete Alonso. Now, when you look at somebody like Corbin Burnes, we already know how good this guy can be. 3 consecutive seasons with 30 plus starts, 190 plus innings pitched, less than a 3.5 earned run average, 180 plus strikeouts, less than 4 fielding independent pitching, and of course a 3.5 win plus 3.5 plus win season. Kitchen sink arsenal last year, another career year in Baltimore. Of course, we know about the signature cutter that he has, which I will get into in a little bit in regards to some of the concerns. We know that he can touch the high 90s. And then also with the incredible breaking stuff that he has, which I believe is the best part about him as to where he's able to get chases at a very elite rate this year in the 89th percentile. Lots of swings and misses, of course. And he gives you a lot of innings, great contact manager, of course. And he also knows how to work the ground ball as well, getting outs, going deeper into games. We know that he does have not just the explosive stuff, but also just very potent stuff. Let's just say that, as to where he has a lot of different directions of. He is pretty much the articulation of more weapons, more kills, as to where you're looking at somebody like Corbin Burnes, where he has so much depth in his arsenal that he can get swings and misses on any single one of these pitches. He also can contact manage with any of these types of pitches when you're talking about it from left-handers to right-handers of what he is facing. Now, when it comes to somebody like Corbin Burnes, I do want to put it out there. It has been something that has come of notice since free agency started, talking about the declining K rate, a lot less of swing and miss on a lot of the primary stuff. There definitely has been a regress. Small one. He's still been good. He has still gotten the results. He is still a really good pitcher. I still believe that he is a frontline arm. Is he the ace that we saw a few years ago? Probably not at the trajectory we are going. Once again, somebody like Corbin Burnes, it would be an awesome get. We know it would be. He would be, the 1A to 1B to somebody like Kodai Senga, depending on what you get from Kodai Senga next year, because we don't know. But when it comes to somebody like Corbin Burnes, there is some caution there. But then you're also looking at something where you're like, okay, well, this guy's been an established arm for a long time. He would be in the top of the rotation. He's exactly what we need. Somebody who can give us innings, go deep into games, attacks the strike zone, does not walk anybody. Andrew, I'll go to you in regards to Corbin Burnes, because we have talked about the connection before between him and David Stearns. Of course, Jim Bowden kind of putting it in the articulation of, oh, he's the number one priority. He wants Corbin Burnes. You do think about it in the sense of like, okay, well, Stearns has been really good with pitching. We have seen him, be able to get the best out of some guys who don't succeed somewhere else. Could it be possible that maybe he brings up that uptick with Corbin Burnes again? We'll see, but he's going to be a hot commodity on the free agent market nonetheless. So what do you think about somebody like Corbin Burnes? Of course, I feel like anybody would take him. He's going to have a big market, but regarding the fit of Corbin Burnes, the premium pitching, the pitching market, I mean, there's a lot to unpack in regards to this, because it's not going to just be Corbin Burnes that they add to this rotation in this offseason. They have other spots to fill.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that I think Frank has been saying for 4 years that when he was in Milwaukee in the trade, he wanted him. I mean, obviously, he's been one of the best pitchers in baseball. Like, it's not like, oh, this is like some random. Let's use Kevin Gausman for an example. A couple years where he's like, he's really bad, had like one really good year. Like, okay, This is a guy that consistently is in top threes in Cy Youngs every single year of his career. He's got one. He's got only one Cy Young. You know, he's nominated. He won't win this year, but he's in the top three again. No, he's not.
That's great, man.
He wasn't. No, he wasn't this year. He wasn't this year.
That's great.
Yeah. But let's look at the, I get, obviously, I always hate term. And let's play super positive, which, you know, on this show we do this all the time. We are so positive.
If you're new here, yes, we do.
We are so positive. So let's say it's a 7-year deal, which, again, you know me, I hate term, but let's play this game. It's a 7-year deal. Let's say David Stearns and this pitching factor that we've seen some great arms been developed over the last couple of years. Let's say Brandon Sproat is what we think he can be. A front-end guy. Okay, there's a cost-controllable ace for 6 years. Let's say the Hidden Blade can be a middle of rotation. That's 6 years of cheap deals. If you can develop your pitching, and let's say you can develop that youth, yes, it helps now. Obviously, it's going to help the most right now when you're in a World Series or getting back to being a consistent winner. But let's say you can develop those arms and you get those cost-controllable arms, and let's say three fifths of your rotations making league min for 4 of the years of the 7. That's not a terrible idea. And yes, so I would expect Stearns and Cohen to add more bigger names or more proven innings and whatever. But having this guy, and what David Stearns said in every press conference we saw at the GM meetings, what was the first 2 things he said about when adding pitching? Innings and starts. This is the literal perfect guy for that. The guy's going to guarantee you to give you 190 innings and at least 30 starts. And even when he's injured, it's not big injuries. I mean, he had it in his early career, but ever since he's been the guy, like he is now, he's been relatively healthy, 30 starts, 180 innings every year. Yes, the cutter, and I know the nerds are going to say it, and it's true. This stuff has gotten worse. That's not, we can't be blinded by. But let's say, again, if Brandon Sproat is as good, this year he's going to be the 1 or 1A with Senga. Let's say year 3, he becomes your 3 starter. Let's say you add another guy, and Sproat's that guy. As the contract ages, maybe there is better pitching that the role for him can be diminished. Yes, you're still paying what's going to be, 34 million, maybe close to.
Yeah.
You would think he'd maybe want Scherzer money, but I doubt
he's going to try to top the Cole AAV.
Yeah. So 36, so at least.
Yeah.
Yes. Would you like $36 million for your 3 starter in year 5 of that deal? No. But again, let's say you're developing young pitching at cheap cost, like Milwaukee and Stearns has done. Then you can live with that, especially in a why the hell did I call him Stephen Cohen? In a Steve Cohen world, okay, you're paying $36 million for your number 3, but Brandon Sproat's, a consistent all-star throwing 102 and is an ace. Let's say they play Roki Sasaki. It's not realistic, but look, we're playing positivity happy time. You got those 2 guys. Let's see. It does make sense. Again, I don't like term, and it's probably going to cost 7 to 8 years at, let's say, the Cole AAV. It's going to be a lot of money, but again, I've said I am in the free agent market. I'm only looking at stars. That's what the Dodgers do. They don't mingle in the mid-tier of prospects. Again, last year was different because they got Ohtani. And okay, they got Teo on a 1-year deal. You look what the Dodgers do. It's the top of the market, and then they develop youth and then find veterans for cheap to fill the roster. For me, I've said it all for agency. I don't care. The only 2 guys I have interest in are Burnes and Soto. You could figure out the middle rotation guys. I could trust Stearns to be that and find a Lorenzen, those types. Sure. But that's for David Stearns. But if actual term and money, the only 2 guys worth it on this market are those 2. And if those are the 2 guys that Stearns, let's say, one wants, and it'd be kind of funny like we saw a couple years ago with Brody. Sandy and Cohen being like, well, he wanted Springer and the other one Bauer. It would be kind of funny if Cohen wants Soto and Burnes or Stearns wants Burnes. So you maybe would have that dynamic again. We'll see. Hell, in the world, maybe they get both. We're being positive here. But again, Burnes would be perfect, not just for this year, but throughout the contract. And if you can do what David Stearns always does, you can live with that year 6, 7, 8 in the deal if you're continuing to develop the youth in the farm system.
Yeah, I mean, we go to the chat. Amazy saying, I'm not giving Burnes 6 or 7 years, which is completely understandable because pitching is pitching. And that's pretty much the risk that you're going to take signing anyone to even maybe a 2 or 3 year deal when it comes to that. Daniel coming in. What's going on? Another loyal viewer to this chat. But, when it comes to, the overall pitching market. We know how expensive it is going to be, and it's going to continue to be even more expensive as the years go on. So that's also something to look at. Frank, I'll go to you regarding somebody like Corbin Burnes. I know that you are a big fan of him. But there's also, some other things that they do need to fulfill in this rotation. So do need to be cautious about that. But when it comes to somebody like Corbin Burnes, it's somebody that's pretty good to have at the top. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I mean, like Andrew was saying, he's got it like year in, year out. He's just been really good. And what's tough about when you look at the starts that he's made and you look at the past 3 years, looking at, 33 starts, 32 starts, 32 starts. So he's making every single start. And like, you want to circle that as a good thing. Like, okay, here's someone who's very reliable and not injury prone. But then at the same time, you feel like with pitching, you just feel like, are you going to be the team that gives the money? Then all of a sudden, here comes the Tommy John. Here comes, just something else. And now all of a sudden, that thing that you thought was a benefit is actually a detriment, because like you could only stay so healthy as a pitcher for so long before. And once you turn 30, the likelihood of that decline is starting to break down is more likely. So we talk so much about being very hesitant or being very cautious when you're going years. And it's to the max when it comes to starting pitching. We know that like if you try to commit a lot of years to a starting pitcher, it's just very, very risky. But what I will say in fairness is that the Mets have done worse. The Mets have given max money to pitchers who are 40. This is a guy who's 30. So it's like, there's a little bit of a difference there. Like they have done worse in the Cohen regime twice. So I feel like, there are worse moves that they have made. So, if you're giving him 6 years, you give him 7 years. It's not ideal, but I feel like you have to look at, all right, well, what situation is this team in right now? What just happened last month? You were in the National League Championship Series against the Los Angeles Dodgers. You took them to 6 games. And I'll tell you what, if the Mets had Corbin Burnes on that team, they have a much, much better chance of winning that series. Because what I look at was that Manaea, his arm gave out. He was not used to this. Severino did not come through. Senga did not come through. So it's like you needed somebody to actually be an ace and step up and give you a big start and not have the Dodgers score 10 runs, 9 runs, 12 runs, actually go deep into the game, rest of your bullpen, and win it. And I feel like with Corbin Burnes, the Mets have such a better chance to win at least one more of those games. And now you're talking about, game 7, or maybe you could actually win the series. I don't know. But I just think that you have to think about, like, where's your team at? And it's like, that's when you would get Corbin Burnes, is when you're trying to win a World Series. You're in win now mode. You should be a few steps away from getting there. That's when you go for Corbin Burnes. If you're a team that, you're just kind of fighting against the playoffs, you're around 500, you probably shouldn't be making a big offer to Corbin Burnes. But when you're a team that's trying to win a World Series, you already have Lindor locked up, you already have Senga, and you already have some pieces here, and you're trying to maximize that, you're trying to capitalize on that, this is what you should be going for. You still have Christian Scott out, so we don't know what his future outlook looks like. He was supposed to be the big guy along with Sproat. So it's like you don't know what's going on with him. Obviously, Senga had a couple of injuries this year, and he wasn't very good in the postseason. So it's like you still have those question marks. And I just think that, like, you want to look at short-term deals. I understand it worked for the Mets this year. Like, Manaea was great. Severino was good. But I just don't know how many times you can get away with that also. It's like, it's tough to find that balance of, like, you don't want to go 7 years for a pitcher, but you can't always just do a bunch of 1-year deals, because then it's like, okay, now next year I got to figure out a new rotation. And then the year after I got to figure out another rotation. Like, you don't want to keep building your starting rotation year in, year out. In an ideal world, like Andrew was saying, it's like, okay, I have Scott, I have Sproat, I have Tidwell. Maybe one of these other guys come up, Nolan, or like we talked about, maybe Jonah Tong, like, one of these other guys step up as well into the rotation in the back half. Or you have Peterson, like, okay, maybe. But, it's tough. I mean, there's no exact science of, like, oh, all my young guys are going to hit, or all my 1-year deals are going to hit. Like, it's never exact, but I feel like Corbin Burnes, even if the cutter's not as good as it was and he's regressing a little bit, I feel like he's the closest thing to a legitimate ace right now to give you really good starts when it matters most that you are going to find. All these other hypothetical scenarios of, if Sproat hits, or if my 1-year deals hit again, I find diamonds in the rough. No, get the diamond. Like, he's right there. So I feel like if everything lines up, it's not a crazy contract. Maybe if you don't get Juan Soto, I feel like he would help this particular Mets team out a lot. Like if I had to choose between Adames and Corbin Burnes, I'm choosing Corbin Burnes 10 times out of 10 because I just feel like he helps this particular Mets team. You want to talk about like general team building? Okay, maybe differently, but the particular fit, he's the much better fit.
I mean, when you're talking about like these young cost controllable pieces, it doesn't really matter what point, or what age that they are as well. You also can look at, just the overall mileage that they do have on their arm. When you talk about,
I'm sorry. Wait a minute. What did trading for Chris
okay.
Sale get the Braves when it mattered most, and the injury-prone guy and his arm broke when they needed him in the playoffs, and he wasn't available?
It was his back, wasn't it?
No, he's got a whole bunch of injuries. He has everything. He's got backs. He's got arms. We talk
He's
about
the stick man. He gets banged up. Listen. When we talk about the overall mileage of these pitchers, I think that's the other thing that you have to go into. Like, yes, there's different age when you're talking about going into age 30. Corbin Burnes will most likely he's going to be 30 next year. He's going into a 30-year-old season, or he's 31. I'm not sure what it is. But when you're talking about going into age 30, the main thing that you look at is basically the mileage on their arm going into age 30. Corbin Burnes has pitched a little bit over 903 career innings in his overall career. And the reason why that is such a big factor as to where, he's been in the league for, let's say, he's been in the majors. You also have the minor leagues you can add on to this as well. He's been in the majors since 2018. So this would be his 7th year as a major league player, 8th year. This would be his 8th year as a major league. This would be his 8th year as a major league starter. So when you're talking about Corbin Burnes, originally he was not a starter. As a starter, the starter workload, he's been pretty much having that starter workload for the past 4 seasons. That's kind of how we look at it from the other angle of like when you're talking about like Jacob deGrom and Clayton Kershaw. Both of them are the same age, but Kershaw has a lot more mileage on his arm than compared to somebody like Jacob deGrom. Both of them have been just as injury prone, so you can't really predict what is going to happen as to where Corbin Burnes has been very healthy. When you put a Mets uniform on, all bets are off. We know that that's the situation there. I think that this is one of the guys I'd be willing to spread out, not the principles, but more of the moral as to where he's, one of the top guys in percentile. But when it comes to somebody like Corbin Burnes, I think that if you are looking for a co-ace with Kodai Senga, the trade market is a lot more effective in that way. I'm not saying that it's like, oh, these guys are a different story. This is that. I think that when you're talking about it in terms of value, there are some guys out there that would be a lot more cost controllable, that you might get a little bit more of a bargain on, that you also could apply to other pieces in the rotation and on the team. I understand you have Steve Cohen's money. It does not matter. But when you're talking about building a full-on roster that isn't top heavy from the top of the rotation, which I don't want, again, where the Mets had a decent amount of depth this year, when it comes to somebody like Corbin Burnes, yes, he is going to get the top dollar. He's going to be the highest paid pitcher out of this entire free agency market this year. Then you look at the trade market of the situation with some of those guys. I know Garrett Crochet is out there. He could possibly get moved. Luis Castillo, that's the main guy that I would point to. That's the guy that I would go after. Then there's also some of these other guys, Sandy Alcantara, who I think was mentioned in the chat. I don't think the Marlins are going to offer him up to us, but when it comes to some of these frontline pieces, I do think that it's just better to look at it from that standpoint, and not go after, giving Corbin Burnes whatever the hell he wants because he was good last year. I think that, yes, Corbin Burnes is great, and if they do end up getting him, that would be great. But like Andrew has said many times, and he can add into this because he said it many times, when it comes to the pitching market, especially when you need multiple guys in this rotation, the trade market is a little bit better to go, in my opinion. Just saying, I just think that giving up assets for some cost controllable pieces when pitching is, a very expensive thing, it's really, really hard to be like, okay, well, I want to hold on to these prospects right now, but also I want to just shell out $40 million a year to Corbin Burnes right now and call it a day and make sure that we get him. So that's how I look at it. I think that it's better to just trade for a frontline piece. But again, Corbin Burnes, I would not be upset about it if they did get him again. Anything, Frank?
I was going to say, I think that, again, it depends on the trade. So, like, if you're giving me Garrett Crochet we're using him as the example. If I have to trade young pitching to get Garrett Crochet, I feel like it takes away from the whole point of what you're trying to do with pitching. We're saying that the best way to do it is with young, controllable pitching. But if you're trading that pitching away to get someone you need to give a big contract to, I feel it's kind of counterproductive, where I could sign Burnes and keep my guys instead of trade for Crochet, who's not as good and more injury prone, and lose my young pieces. I feel like I got to get the big contract anyway. So I feel like you're kind of doing two things there instead of just the one much more simple approach.
It's hard because when you're in the position that the Mets are in, the only guy worth a damn right now is Brendan Sproat. So, I mean, yes, there's some of these other guys who maybe could be good.
For Crochet, give him a big contract when I could just sign Burnes, get big contract, and keep Sproat. Why not both?
It doesn't sound like something that Stearns would do either way, because I know that he would want those young guys there and the cost controllable pieces. But when it comes to the conglomerate of prospects you do have maybe on the middle infield, because I don't think that it's just going to be, pitching prospect for big name pitcher. I think that you're also going to be giving up some position players, Yeah. But when it comes to the trade market, I think if you're trying to win now, I think that's the best way to look at it, because again, tying things down for the cost controllable guys who are going to be a little bit cheaper, you can make the team a little bit deeper. Andrew, I'll let you get in on this, of course, because when it comes to something such as trading for, cost controllable starters, because they are out there. There are many guys that are under control that are getting very underpaid for what their services are providing right now.
I guess, yes, I've always been very active with wanting the trade market, but it also depends how aggressive this team wants to go. Because yes, it was a shittier GM in this situation, but there's a world where I could see it, especially what the cost is for mid-rotation pieces, which again, Blake Snell going to get close to 30. Manaea is going to be pushing 24, 25.
Yeah.
Is there a world, again, this is probably not getting Soto, where you sign Burnes, and then you trade for Pablo Lopez, Luis Castillo to be your 3 with Senga? And I think that maybe is the way you go. If you're building through straight, if it's just Stearns, again, this is a hypothesis, just a different scenario. I do agree with Frank. I am not on the Crochet thing. I'm not touching him. Let somebody overpay for a 5 and fly reliever.
Yeah, I wouldn't be on the Crochet thing either,
I'm not.
I'm just saying, there's guys out there.
But I think for me, where I'm very trading, meaning if you're telling me would I rather bring back Sean Manaea or trade for Luis Castillo, that's where I'm I didn't have Burnes in this kind of conversation because I think Burnes is the only true ace. If Burnes is here, I think for that, kind of like what we did with Scherzer and Bassett, that kind of thing, except get a better version of that, meaning younger and not senile, where you can get, instead of paying Manaea let's say 25, I can go trade for Kevin Gausman making 22 for the next 2 years, or Castillo making 25 for the next 3 years.
Yes,
if he waives the no move clause. I think if Burnes is a reality, go to that. And I think you pivot the trade market to fill out the rotation. I think if that's what Stearns wants, I think that's a way to do it instead of shelling out term.
You also could trade for a 2 as well, a starting pitcher 2 as well, because you have Senga at the top of the rotation. If you look at him as a starting pitcher 1, I know there's uncertainty. I know he's been hurt all 2024. I get it. But if they look at Kodai Senga as the starting pitcher 1 still in this rotation, you also can go for a 2, such as other guys like Luis Castillo, or you're talking about, other guys you can pair him up with. Kevin Gausman, who, like you said, had an outlier huge year in his contract year, got paid, has been good, not at the level that he was before he got paid. I feel like that is another thing you can look at. But, because I think that Kodai Senga, I still consider him a frontline piece. Like, it's not like I'm like, oh, well, who sucked in the postseason? Trade him. Like, I'm not going to tell you that right now because he's going to be here for the next 3 years. And I do believe he'll move back to that form. He just needs to be healthy to do so. And that's the kind of confusion. But when it comes to the overall rotation, you could go for another frontline arm that isn't a legitimate number one, such as Corbin Burnes. I'm not saying don't go after Corbin Burnes because I think the Mets should be in that market. We have 3 rotation spots empty. We have, we have a frontline guy in Kodai Senga who didn't pitch all year. We have some other little depth pieces. We have, like maybe David Peterson is in that formula. Paul Blackburn, we don't even know if he is going to be. We don't know if. Shut up. If we don't know what's going to be the deal with Blackburn, maybe he ends up getting non-tendered because he's in ARB3. I don't know if they want to give him that. They did trade for him, so we'll see. But when it comes to the overall look at the overall rotation, I think that there's definitely some moves that you can make. It depends on how bold they want to go. Like, I feel like it's all depends on how bold they want to go. And the same thing goes for, like what we just said regarding Pete Alonso, because they have Mark Vientos who could possibly play first base and replace him in that regard. Then if you don't get one of those frontline arms such as Burnes, or even if you're talking about Max Fried, or you're talking about these guys, even Blake Snell, who just went on to the free agency market, declining his player option. If you don't go and get in anybody in that level or that echelon, you still have Kodai Senga at the top here. And when MLC comes in here and says, sign Eovaldi 2 to 3 years, that I will get behind because I love Nathan Eovaldi. I know you two as well love him as well.
I've loved him for a long time, but I can't say it for so many off seasons. I mean, eventually he's going to get a little too old, and we're going to have 3 years.
Eventually he'll be 46 years old. We'll still be asking for him. Like,
how
long can we do this Andrew Chafin every offseason crap,
Exactly. But I just want to say one thing real quick, just something to consider about like where this Mets team was this past season compared to now. Like, there's a world, a very likely scenario, like it's on paper that Shohei Ohtani is going to be pitching for the Dodgers next year. And like,
their whole rotation will be back. Yeah.
Yeah. Glasnow is going to be back.
Yeah.
So you could have Senga, maybe a good version of Senga. And, maybe you trade for Gausman. But I'm like, I don't think that's enough. I just don't think that that's enough caliber of guys to go against this Dodgers lineup, number one. But number
if that's your goal, that is your goal right now, looking at it, because I know that Stearns like to be the opportunistic. If that's your goal, if you're like, okay, how do I beat the Dodgers? That's my entire goal of this offseason, no matter what. How do I beat the Dodgers right now? Not sustainable winning, anything. You go and get Corbin Burnes by any means necessary. If that is what you're looking at, like farther down the line, that's how I look at the Dodgers. But again,
but what I'm saying is that the way the Dodgers are set up and the way they spend money, like, they're always going to be really good. Like, they're always a threat. We know the Braves are always a threat. Like, you have the Phillies with like a really good rotation. So it's like, no matter what, and we just say we're starting pitching, like, you're going to need a bunch of it. So if you have an opportunity, like Corbin Burnes, he's not just any pitcher. Like, he's one of the very best. So like, if he's available, like, it makes a lot of sense. So I'm just saying that, like, you also don't get to game 6 of the NLCS every year. Like, the Mets haven't done it in a decade. Like, we hope that's not the case. Like, I want to see sustainable winning. What I'm saying is that, like, if I just got the NLCS, I don't know if I want to necessarily go backwards right now. I feel like I should try to capitalize on that too. So, I mean, it could go both ways. Listen, I love sustainable winners who are always in the CS, and it's fine, and we could do this young approach and always be good. But at the same time, I'm like, I also don't want to let it go to waste. I just feel, we could go back to 2015, different ownership, but we were in the World Series. And then all of a sudden we just kept going backwards and we never got back there. Like, you don't want that to happen either. You don't want to let your window kind of close. You want to, I don't know. It's a tough balance. I mean, there's not necessarily always a right answer, but I just think for me personally, like, I need elite starting pitching to compete with some of these teams right now. I just think the way that series went. Like, it was a disaster, some of these games. They were just getting blown out because the Dodgers were just scoring over and over and over again, and we're just out of it. Like, with Corbin Burnes, that doesn't happen. I just feel like no matter, you can point any team you want to, but like when they have really good starting pitching, you need good starting pitching to match that. And you're not always going to have
absolutely
it was 13
and they didn't have it. They didn't have it in that series. They did not have the good enough starting pitching to hold off the Dodgers. The Dodgers teed off on us for like 4 of the 6 games that we played, and that was pretty much it. We went home. So when it comes to looking at it from the angle of the Dodgers standpoint, I understand wanting to go all in with the starting pitching because of what they do. But when it comes to like the overall endless resources the Dodgers have, and when you talk about like, how far they did get, when it comes to the World Series team in 2015, if that as an example, I personally I just think that everybody on that team just afterwards dropped dead, and they were never healthy, and they were never the same again. Like, that's how I kind of like, I feel like they could have gotten, back to the championship series, maybe the divisions. Like, I feel like they could have got back in 2016 if not everybody just completely dropped dead, got hurt, and were never the same again. I mean, we had so many different cases of that happening from throughout that entire roster in 2015. Just to go from the specifics, Noah Syndergaard would get hurt all the time. Matt Harvey would get hurt all the time. Yoenis Cespedes, who was the big counterpart, he got hurt. David Wright, never healthy. I mean, we had that whole even the catchers, Travis d'Arnaud, never healthy. You even had some injuries from Familia the next year, and who was the other? Lagares kept getting hurt as well towards the end of his Mets. Like, I mean, everybody kept on getting hurt. When I look at it from the overall health standpoint, that's kind of how I look at it. And it does seem like a loss from what we saw this year, where a lot of guys were healthy. We didn't see, we didn't have our top guy healthy in Kodai Senga, but to have that conglomerate of the pitching and go all in that way, I understand wanting to do that. Andrew, if there was anything you wanted to add in regards to that, because again, a lot of it does go to the pitching, because the offense was fine-ish in that series against the Dodgers, mainly because their pitching was not even healthy either. But when it comes to our pitching, we got outpitched in that series, no matter what, no matter how you want to look at it. Andrew?
And I was going to take this in a completely different, so about the rotation, but the financial part of this, which shouldn't matter, but does matter. Differing opinion, but if we still think Kodai Senga is a front-end guy, he's making $15 million. That is what fives get now.
Mm-hmm.
David Peterson, love him or not, if he's your 5, you'd love it. He's making $5 million next year.
Yep.
If Brandon Sproat can be half of what we think he can be, he's going to make $800K the next 4 years. My point is, there is way too much money. Again, you're getting a underpaid ace if you think Senga is still an ace. If in the financial way of baseball, he's a 3. Financially, he's your number 3 starter.
Yes.
So you could bring in 2 guys making more than him, and you're still saving money on what the cost of pitching is now. So I get Stearns has always been develop, draft, develop. I do think, again, you can bring in Burnes, you could trade for pick your 2, and Senga's your 3. That's not a bad thing. Like the fact that, Senga needs to be the 2. No, Senga can be the 3, and you got a pretty good damn rotation. And that's how you beat. Yes, you're not going to match the Dodgers talent for talent. I guess I'm looking at this financially. You have the, I get it's not a cap league, but for what people pay for the rotation, go look at the Padres rotation. Yes, go look at how much the Dodgers and the Yankees rotations are getting paid. The Mets are going to be way under that. Even let's say you give, Burnes whatever, if it's going to be 37, 38, you add that, you'd still be cheaper. Yes, I know cheapness is not the word we want to use now, but the fact that you've got 2 guys you can confidently say one more than the other is going to be in the rotation. You hope your top prospect can give you productive innings. There's 3 guys making less than $23 million. That's 3/5 your rotation. Yes, you're banking on one of them being a prospect. I understand that. But again, there's $23 million for 3 spots. You're telling me you couldn't go 30, 20? go another $50 million, and then potentially still add maybe a swingman at $10 million. Financially, they have this space because you're getting, again, Senga underpaid. David Peterson is making below market value for a fifth starter. You can afford to overpay a smidge because
I get it.
You can
even
still make that trade.
And then there's 2 contracts I'd love to get the fuck out of here in order to make that even more flexible.
And one's gone after the year. So, I mean, it's like, I'm not even talking.
Yeah.
I'm keeping this strictly pitching side.
That's an extra $20 million. Exactly.
So, there is way to do it. And it just depends how aggressive. Again, to Frank's point, you want to match up with the Dodgers? Yes, because you have to beat them. But maybe we've seen it again. How many years the Dodgers, they were the best team on paper, and how many times they didn't get to the World Series? I understand that. It's a part. You have to eventually maybe get rid of them. But hopefully that other team in California maybe can not choke 3 straight games getting shut out, and maybe we don't have to have this conversation with the Dodgers. We could be making fun of them again. My point is, yes, you always, like we saw it in the NBA with our team, you have to focus on, eventually you're going to have to beat that team, but there are going to be years you're not going to face the Dodgers. So at the point of build the best rotation you can. If you can match up with the Dodgers, you can match up with the Dodgers. Maybe you get a break where you're not facing them, and maybe you have the better overall rotation.
Speaking of regardless with the Dodgers, I don't know if I feel like you're going to face them every year, but Ken saying the Dodgers are beatable. They beat a shit Yankees team. The Mets were close. The Mets lost to a Dodgers team that wasn't fully healthy. Let's not forget that. Their starting rotation, they know that they get Shohei Ohtani back into their rotation, making his debut. We know Tyler Glasnow was out. Yoshinobu Yamamoto was not healthy the entire year. They're most likely going to have to replace Jack Flaherty. Poor guys. And
they're going to get
Dusty
the
May
other,
could be coming back.
And then you'll add
they have a lot. They could be getting Roki Sasaki too. Like, they're going to load up. They're going to be loaded up next year. They're going to be a lot better pitching wise. And, they still outpitched us in that regard. They do have tons of free agents, but they find a way to replace those free agents just with star power. And that's what the Dodgers are able to do. They just go, fuck it, balls to the wall every single year. And they got their trophy this year. And, maybe it's possible they repeat with an even more stronger team that they have. So, you just hope that you get the better results in that way. They didn't get it this time. They lost in the National League Championship Series to them. They took them to 6 games. They could not finish it off. I don't know if they're ever going to get that chance again, but the only way to look at it is to build a team that can do that. And M-Easy, talking about how I beat the Dodgers should not be the goal. Winning the division should be the goal. Not necessarily. When you talk about the overall contention, it's basically whoever gets hot in September. It's basically whoever gets hot at the right time. All you have to do is get in. That's kind of how it has been, and how it's kind of been designed with this new playoff format of it has to be the hottest team that goes all the way. There have been some proves where some prove it's where the layover has not done well for teams. There has been where the layover does do well for teams and they're fine. But it's all really just building off of that momentum. So I'm not looking to be the team that wins the division next year. That does not matter. You just got to get in. Maybe you get a more sure-handed position of being first place. But personally, after I saw in 2022, the Mets have a 10.5 game lead, and they were fighting all year with the Braves. That's when I gave up trying to care about winning the division. I cared about getting into the playoffs. Not to mention that same year, Mets and Braves were battling for that National League East. They were going back and forth and back and forth. Braves make this incredible comeback. One of the last series of this season, they sweep us, they win the division. Who went to the World Series? The Phillies. The Phillies went to the World Series, right? That other team that ended up making the playoffs. That's what I mean. So it does not matter who wins the division. I'm not saying that, the team that wins the division will automatically be a first round exit. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is you just got to get in. Anything can happen. Whatever. Listen,
You're
I'm not saying Mets
misinterpreting
fans
it.
shouldn't
You're
want.
you're you're not
You're
even
misinterpreting
getting
this
it.
in a completely different way. I'm not saying that the Mets shouldn't want to win the division. If you win the division, great. But I'm just
But you
saying
shouldn't
that
crush yourself over
all you have
it.
to do is get in.
Yeah.
Yeah, you shouldn't obsess over it. You should just get into
You
the
shouldn't
playoffs.
tire yourself out.
Just
Their
get
whole
in.
team is like Mania is like
Yeah.
worn down now because he had to burn his arm out the whole year.
Like Andrew will say and agree with me in this regard, right?
Oh God, where are you going?
Don't be the Boston Bruins 2 years ago.
Don't be Tampa. Don't be Boston.
Don't burn yourself out. If only thing that you care about is having a division title banner at Citi Field, so be it. I personally just care about a World Series trophy. That's what I want. You win the division, great. You played a good 162 games. Fantastic. I care about the actual dance. Anything can happen in the dance. Anybody can beat anybody. We saw the Mets as a 6 seed go all the way to the National League Championship Series. We saw the Nationals as a 6 seed win the entire goddamn thing. Anything can happen. So you're not trying to set this up to win the division. You're trying to set this up to get into the playoffs. Anything else you guys want to add in regards to this? And I just want to get into the outfield, which we won't spend that much time on. But
Yeah,
again,
I think just for the whole
ahead.
division thing, what I'm saying is that elite starting pitching is important in the postseason, whether you win the division or not.
No matter what. Yep.
Elite starting pitching helps you win World Series. I would rather win the World Series and not win the division. It's fine. As long as I win the World Series, that's all that matters. That's what's important. That's what I care about. And then as far as Andrew's scenario that he's talking about, as far as getting the guys a little over 15 mil, 20 mil, whatever, to replace, get a 2-for-1 kind of thing. It's one big guy. I just think with this particular free agent market, I just don't see those names where you could pull it off. Mostly because of age. I feel like a lot of these guys you're going to be paying 35 and up. So, I mean, just for me personally, I just see guys that I'm I'd rather go for Burnes at 30 than a lot of these guys at 35 and up. Unless you have names, Andrew.
Sign the top line guy, trade for the next one, probably.
I was saying sign Burnes and then trade for the 3. That's what I'm.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm.
Okay.
Again, if Evaldi, they're all again.
So basically, Scherzer Bassett type of.
Yes,
approach,
but better,
basically.
younger, and younger.
Yeah.
Or I guess in the point of, again, using the contracts because again, Michael Walker is signed for $17 million. Kevin Gausman making $22 million. That's what I mean. I mean, you could look at as a Mets fan, yes, a Bassett and Scherzer, you can make it like that. I'm looking at it, I'd rather give up a couple assets than overpay a 4 with money that now, because, everything's going up. That's what I mean. Again, sign Burnes or whatever the hell it costs, and then trade for the 3 if it's a guy making less than market value. That's what I've been putting out in the world, not...
Yes.
Yeah.
And
what I... your buck type of thing. Yeah.
Would I love Nathan Eovaldi on a 2-year, $50 million deal? That's probably what it's going to cost to get him. Is that appealing? Yes. I like Nathan Eovaldi, but $25 million over the next 2 years for a 36-year-old Eovaldi? I love him. But that's kind of what it's going to cost. And the Braves already showed interest. Of course they did. They're going to lose Charlie Morton and replace him with Nathan Eovaldi. Great. Yeah. But again, that's the point. Again, Manaea is going to get 20. Yes, everyone, Mets fans are going to say, oh, Sean Manaea is better. But if you look, who's a better pitcher, Kevin Gausman or Sean Manaea? That's the kind of conversation I'm trying to have. Luis Castillo or Sean Manaea? That's where I'm in.
Yeah, it's a value deal type of thing. Yeah, I get what you mean by that. I mean,
I'm not talking just crochet. Yeah,
and it sucks that we can kind of kick ourselves in regard to that when it comes to it. But when you look at a contract out there of good value, 15 million, like how you're getting from Kodai Senga. I mean, look at what Seth Lugo did this year and what he is getting paid.
Yeah.
Next year, and then he also has a player option, which he's most likely going to opt out if he pitches anywhere to that. He's up for the Cy Young this year, so it's like you got that type of output the way that he did in Kansas City. I'm not saying that the next middle rotation guy or a guy who never has started ever before or hasn't started for a while is going to be a Cy Young candidate. But what I'm saying is the overall value that the Royals got from Seth Lugo, which I mean, it sucks to look at that from a Mets standpoint, absolutely. Yeah. But, he finally got his chance to start. And, and when you talk about it from, another standpoint as to, him starting and being that, cost controllable piece, for like next year and then the year afterwards, probably not. Those types of bargain deals you can put in there. Sometimes you do end up getting lucky, but then you also have these big names out there that they're going to command a lot on bigger AAVs or whatever, and that kind of ties you up a little bit. But guys like Nathan Eovaldi is someone I would pair up for somebody for getting a top line piece. So if it was Burnes and Eovaldi, I'm completing the rotation right there. Maybe there's somebody else that you bring in there last minute or something to make it a possible 6-man. I'm okay with that type of 1-2 of, Burnes, Senga, and Eovaldi. 100%. I'm 100% going out there in the postseason, regardless of what Senga did in the National League Championship Series, because I believe he'll be a lot better. But when it comes to, piecing this rotation together, they do have those pieces that are cost controllable who have given us quality. I don't know how long it's going to continue with David Peterson, but he still is a quality piece going into next year after the year he just had. When it comes to, Blackburn's a different story. Tyler McGill, I don't want to even see him in the rotation. Jose Budo did give us some quality. I don't know if he's going to be, a 150 inning type of guy where he swung back and forth from the rotation at the beginning of the year to the end. I think that the complementary mid-rotation piece to go after Corbin Burnes is something they have flexibility to do. And when we're talking about, from Ken saying you don't want Manaea or Severino, for me, I would go for Manaea. Severino, goodbye. Both of them got the qualifying offer, so we're going to have to see what direction that goes in. But they're both going to have qualifying offers attached to them. So their market's definitely going to diminish. It's possible that we retain one of them, possible they retain both. I think the Mets are going to make an effort to retain at least one of them. So that's going to be a part of your rotation, but it can't be the only one. Even though they both at times pitched like frontline arms for majority of the season, Manaea a little bit more. Severino definitely returned to somewhat of his form. They're not going to guarantee you to do that next year and the year after that. I think that you have a better chance of that with somebody like Sean Manaea. But when it comes to Severino, who knows? I don't know. Before we go, Matt Allen, no one knows. Nobody knows if that guy has ever existed before in his life. We did get an update towards the end of the season that he was throwing in Port St. Lucie. That's about it. We probably won't see him in spring training. He's still going to be rehabbing. It looks like he's going to try to pitch in 2025. So we'll see what happens in regards to that. I don't think you see much of him. Maybe he gets an inning or whatever in spring training. Maybe he comes back in May or June. I don't know. He's been MIA for 4 fucking years now. So who knows? But other things, Manaea greater than Castillo, Castillo on a downward trend. Absolutely not. That is not correct. No. I can tell you right now that is not correct.
And Manaea is probably getting a 4-year deal. You got Castillo at $23 million for 2 years. I'd rather take that than overpay for, yes, he had a good year in a Met uniform.
I think Manaea is great. I think Manaea is great, and I think he'll continue to be great for 2 or 3 years from now. But when it comes to Luis Castillo, that's somebody who gives you almost like 200 innings every single year. He rests the bullpen. Is a robotic strike thrower.
He isn't an ace anymore. I wouldn't put him in an ace category anymore.
You probably could turn him into an ace with the pitcher's ballpark that Seattle and New York is for the Mets. Think about that.
But he stopped throwing his changeup. That's like the one thing. He went to Seattle. He stopped throwing his changeup. Now he's just strictly 4-seamers. That's the changeup.
Fuck him then.
The changeup things that he did, obviously he was in Cincinnati. That was his pitch. Seattle's tweaked it. He's thrown more fastballs, less changeups. If you have a primary
sinker, you don't really need to use the changeup as much. But
so, again, whatever. This is a Mariners
we'll
podcast.
See.
Yeah.
Again, we'll see what happens in regards to that. Project Ball saying if I see Paul Blackburn, I might cry. I think Same. I personally, given how starters are. And the price of them, I'd give them another chance, but I don't know. Health, inconsistency.
Again, the way I see it, though, is that like
put him on that platter.
Is Paul Blackburn making a playoff start for you?
Hell no.
Then
he's absolutely not. But I'm just saying if you want him to be Trevor Williams.
Oh well, yeah, the swing role maybe, but like I don't know.
Like,
I feel like maybe you could find
you need
something
somebody to eat
cheaper
those
for
innings.
that
I'm
role.
not saying in the prior, like we were just talking about, like matching it up with the Dodgers. That's
With
a
bad
playoff
spinal
conversation,
fluid,
of
you're
course.
not. I don't know if you're gonna be getting innings. Like that's just
No.
not a good. That's like a bad injury. You know what I mean? Like that's just not a normal.
It sounds
thing.
bad. It sounds bad, and then we did hear that it was like, okay, it's not as bad as it sounds. It's bad.
Yeah.
I think he eventually. I think there's some left for him, but when you're talking about like, pieces that can be spot starters or whatever, I give him another chance for that. What is it? $5 million he's going to make.
He wasn't particularly great his last couple starts in the Met uniform.
He wasn't.
That
He
didn't help
was
his
not
pace.
great. He was not great, but he wasn't brought in here for like top frontline quality. I feel like he was just here to eat innings. He wasn't able to do that because he got hurt. So
He also was getting like 5 runs. That's not eating innings either. Like,
well, what can I tell you? He's not a bad. There you go. Exactly. That's exactly what I was just going to say. He filled in the blank for me. Blackburn is not a bad 5th, 6th starter. Probably more of the 6th than the 5th, but we'll see.
Still better.
What happens.
He's still better than Tyler McGill, but
Project Ball saying Vassell and Hamill are pretty much busts, right? Hamill, I give it a little bit more time. Vassell sucks. Vassell's terrible. I have no faith in Vassell whatsoever. Maybe we do see a look at him if we have so many injuries that we can't even count on our fingers. But we'll see what happens. He is in ARB 3 if you're talking about Blackburn, but it's possible he does get non-tendered in ARB 3 because, again, we don't know about it per value and his health. But as for health and per value and another piece of this team, I do want to get into the outfield, which will probably put us over the 2-hour mark. But again, we're doing this once a week, so we probably can go over the 2-hour mark. As for the outfield, we did get some news this week about Tyrone Taylor, about him undergoing not 1, but 2 surgeries in the offseason. And it seems like he will be ready for spring training. But when you're looking at the Mets' current outfield situation, there is a lot of not just question marks, but it's also just a very weird headline separate type of thing when I say that. And when I'm looking at it from the overall current depth chart, it's very thin off of just the 40-man roster because you're going into the winter right now. You have tons of free agents. When you look at Brandon Nimmo, we know he's under contract for quite a long time through 2030. He signed a big 8-year deal. He'll be here for a while. He played a majority of his season in left field, played some center field, but David Stern said that he prefers for him to be the left fielder in the foreseeable future, which I do personally agree with. We'll get into that a little bit deeper as to why. But when it comes to center field, he did say that they're probably going to either sign somebody else, similar to what they did with Bader, maybe, or make also another trade like they did with Tyrone Taylor. When it comes to Starling Marte, what have we not said about Starling Marte these days? He's under contract through the 2025 season. He spent 2 months on the injured list. He was horrendous in right field, gave us somewhat of value offensively, but still diminished. He will be entering a 36-year-old season. And then you look at Tyrone Taylor, who has pretty much played every single one of those outfield positions, 120.1 innings in left field, 273 in center field, and 361 in right field. And now he undergoes those 2 surgeries, like I just said. As for the UFAs, we know that Jesse Winker doesn't play much outfield, but he could play it in a pinch. Harrison Bader will be entering the outfield market. DJ Stewart was just granted free agency. You have available free agents, of course. We've talked about Juan Soto before. Jerickson Profar is out there. Teoscar Hernandez, Anthony Santander, my darling. Tyler O'Neill, Randall Grichuk, and then 2 old friends, Michael Conforto and Mark Canha, as for the top of the wins above replacement chart in the outfield market. But when you're talking about the overall outfield, right now you have Nimmo locked down, who you expect will be better next year. I do expect he will be. You have Marte. We've talked about him before already, about our current stance with him. We would love to move his contract, to be honest, going into this offseason. Who knows if it will happen. Then you have Tyrone Taylor, who, is not a great player, but he's a winning baseball player. Let's just say that. He can do those things in the margins, help you out. He was definitely a big contributor to this team in a lot of different ways. But he undergoes 2 different surgeries. Will he be better by the time spring training comes along? Most likely, but he's a 4th outfielder. We know that at his current value, he's a 4th outfielder. He should not really be starting every single day. Maybe if you want to put somebody at DH and add him into the outfield, that's the best value you can get from him. But when it comes to the Mets outfield, the rest of it, oh boy, it thins out. It 100% thins out. I know we have a guy named Drew Gilbert who we hope makes a contribution to the Mets outfield, but he has not made his major league debut yet, so he's not considered a factor yet. Hopefully he makes himself into a factor because he'd be a cost controllable piece. Then we have this outfield market, which definitely has some talent on it. It is topped by a man named Juan Soto. You have Anthony Santander out there. You have Jerickson Profaro coming off of a great year we've seen the Mets linked to before. Configuring the outfield the way that it has been, from what Stearns has said, I think it's just easy to just, from the beginning now, because most moves are not going to be made for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of days, maybe something flows, but nothing crazy. Your full-on outlook of this outfield, some things that you would plug in. I mean, there's a lot of angles you can go at this because you have a lot of certainty right now. Even Nimmo, I didn't even add, got the what was it, the quarter zone shot, wearing a walking boot throughout the entire offseason after that foot injury that he was dealing with towards the end of the year. Andrew, I would go to you regarding the outfield. I know that it's really easy to just say, okay, sign Soto, but the other ways that you can look at it, they're going to need depth as well, because they have 3 viable outfielders. One of them is 36. One is coming off of 2 surgeries, and one of them is coming off of a career down year where his foot was bothering him for a majority of it. So lots of question marks and lots of questions to answer regarding the outfield.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, everyone's like, oh, the solution, obviously putting Soto and right. Here's, I guess, the problem. We all know Tyrone Taylor is not an everyday center fielder. And we hope Harrison Bader's not back. Like, I think there are upgradable pieces to Harrison Bader. Again, it's not in free agency because, again, it's literally him, Michael A. Taylor, and that's about it. Those are your pure center fielders on the free agent market. When it comes to, obviously, Santander and Teo, they're probably more DHs than actual outfielders, and we already have a old, senile, non-defensive center outfielder on this market. I think both of those guys would be more DHs than outfielder. Teo had to be because, the Dodgers have a guy named Shohei Ohtani to play DH, so he had to be stuck out there, and he's not good out there. But when it comes to the Mets, obviously, Nimmo, you expect to be better. If in a perfect world, yeah, you stick Soto and right, it'd be great. Center field is still obviously an issue, and yes, everyone's going to say, "Oh, we have Drew Gilbert again." It's a non-factor until he's proven. He wasted
not even that good at right field either,
and he's exactly. So you're having 2 guys in the corners.
He's a Gold Glove candidate. Never mind.
He was a Gold Glove candidate. Yeah, I forgot about that. We've two-time Gold Glove candidate last 2 years. Yeah, but you look at that, you're going to need a guy you're going to need a defensive first center fielder, and let's say Tyrone Taylor can be your 4th outfielder. Again, that's what he should be. There are guys, again, we're probably saving those guys specifically for a video down the line, but there are some guys who are interesting. They're big names. They're smaller names that, can fill that center field, go-get-'em mentality. And there are even, the bigger names. Maybe you miss out on Soto. Maybe you shift to those bigger names, which, again, I correlated back to earlier, that on teams who have center fielders to us would be average size contracts. To a small market team, they're like, $12 million. That's a hell of money for us. We got to get this off the books. There are guys that can fill that void. Again, sorry, I'm trying to be vague. It's a video coming up in the next couple of weeks. But there are some ideas. I do think Bader is a possibility back just because of that. If you're going to go, if Soto is brought in, I think Harrison Bader coming back's possibility shoots up. if they don't want to go to that trade route, which there are some guys out there. But if, let's say, Soto's in right, yeah, you're going to need a guy that just can get everywhere, because we know the range of Nimmo isn't great, especially if you got 1 foot. And then we all know the monstrosity that is Juan Soto in the outfield. So if Juan Soto is here, expect how the Nimmo Robertson notifications hit. If the Mets would be, oh, we got Soto. Oh shit, we also got Bader back. Don't be surprised. But again, the outfield, the depth isn't great. But again, obviously, we hope Drew can be that. You would expect, and we saw this last year with Stearns, he might come into the season being like, okay, but then you see him all the time. Oh, he signs a JBJ. Oh, he signs a Mike Brasso. Like, and you've seen him do this where he's going to bring in depth, and it'll be a bunch of guys on minor league deals. And again, maybe there's some former top prospects that didn't work out with one team. We've already seen, again, with the 40-man roster tender Rule 5 configuration, there could be some of those guys that maybe had high pedigree of prospects that didn't work out. Maybe Stearns takes a flyer on a bunch of those guys. So, the outfield, again, it's old. I mean, obviously, you still have Starling Marte. We'd love to get rid of him, but again, that's $20 million. Unless you're just eating the money to get rid of the roster spot, which at this point you probably should. You're going to be stuck with him. Again, I'd say there's a 70% chance he's going to be stuck to the bench, and that's the only way to get rid of him, unless you're paying 19.5% of that deal, and the team is getting him is going to get league min deal, but. Again, there are some concerns, obviously. Would Juan Soto ease the pain? Of course. But again, then you still need a center fielder. You still need a DH. So I do trust Stearns that we saw he will bring in depth. If right now we're like, ooh, this is thin. And maybe he'll bring in guys. We've already seen with the infield with the guy that claimed about the Blue Jays. He'll find these under, waiver wire guys who are like, okay, and then maybe they provide some value more than DJ Stewart.
Frank, I'll go to you regarding the outfield. I think that there's definitely some different ways that you can look at it. I know that some of them are not as sexy in the realm of, bringing in somebody like Harrison Bader of that caliber of just a defensive first piece. But when it comes to the Mets outfield, there's depth that is needed beyond just signing Soto to anything, no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that simple right now as far as, like we said, with the current fit. I just think it's unfortunate that Brandon Nimmo was paid to be a center fielder, but can't be a center fielder already. And we still have a few more years to go on that deal. So, I mean, overall he's a good player. So, you have to kind of do what you're inherited with. I felt last season, my opinion was, I don't need Bader if I could have Nimmo play center at least one more year and get an offensive bat. I think right now that's not a thing anymore. Like, Nimmo's going to be in a corner, and right now Marte's in a corner. But again, Marte does not prevent Juan Soto. So
it seems like they had to sign Harrison Bader.
Well, no, now they might. But what I'm saying though is that, like, if I have Juan Soto,
I forgot Teoscar Hernandez is an elite center fielder. So never mind.
Never said Teoscar was playing center field, but okay. What I'm saying is that if you have Juan Soto, then it's okay to have Harrison Bader or a defensive first center fielder. It does not have to be Harrison Bader in particular. But if you have Marte, who's struggling, and then you have Nimmo plus a defensive center fielder, then that looks it doesn't look good. So it's like it needs to be some like a really good bat in the corner to make up for not having a good bat in center. I just don't think having not great bats in multiple spots is just not a good thing to do. And like we said on Marte, it's like we don't know what he is right now. I mean, because his defense isn't good. He's not stealing bases. Didn't hit a home run since June. So he gives you some hits, some singles. But, if he's a singles hitter, just plays right field, like, I mean, what's he really giving me? He's another year older, another year more injury prone. So there needs to be a Soto, or if it is, again, I mean, Teoscar's not good in the corner, but if you want to stick him there, you could. And then, again, it makes it more okay to get a defense first center fielder. If you want to put Santander in the corner, you could. He's not great out there. But, again, it's just much more doable to then have that defensive first center fielder. Even if that guy is Drew Gilbert. Like, we talk about a veteran pushing the young player. It's like you want to sign a veteran for now, and then maybe Drew takes that job later on. You could try that. If you want to try Jet in center field at some point, you could, if second base is occupied by an Acuna or somebody else. Like, there's a few different things that are available to you. Some people mentioned Luis Robert as a trade. I just kind of be a little wary of what I'm giving up. I just think he's not just like this all-around amazing player. I know it was horrible White Sox team, but that just kind of concerns me. Like, I don't know. I question the guy's motor a little bit. I feel like if you're not trying, if you're just okay with being part of the worst team in baseball and you don't want to try, at least for yourself, to have some pride, I have some concerns about your character off the bat. I mean, I just don't think that's a good look. And if people are so worried about Nimmo's arm in center and left, I mean, Robert's arm is not better. So he has speed, so he can cover some ground. But overall, I just don't think he seems like a slam dunk on paper and like on the eye test. But overall, I just don't think he's all that great. I wouldn't be giving up a whole lot to get him. If it's not much, sure, but I wouldn't be giving up a whole bunch to the farm system again. I'd be more like, if we're gonna do that, I'd be looking more for the pitching. But overall, again, it's Soto, see what happens there. Then it's Santander, see what happens there. Maybe Tasker, then see what happens. And then, there's just a few dominoes that need to fall before we kind of make that overall decision on what the final outfield looks like. So for me, I'm just focusing once again on offense first in the corners, and then you can kind of take care of the center field. If it's defensive first, that's fine. Because right now, of all those guys you mentioned, none of them are decent center fielders while still being good offensive players. So like that two-way guy is just not available in the free agent market right now. So you can't just like sign someone, just shove them there to then, just be my two-way guy. Like that guy's not there.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, okay? It's not great. It really is not a great look regarding center field right now. The only guy that I would put out there as a starting caliber piece who I don't think would succeed at all here is Cody Bellinger, who I think, he accepted never mind.
Yeah.
Erase that from your minds, folks. So then you go to Garrett Hampson. You go to Kevin Pillar, who we've been there, done that.
Yeah.
You've been, you have maybe Kiki Hernandez, who seems like he only does well in the postseason
version, sure, but regular season, I mean, I don't know.
Then there's one that I think is the most likely, and it sucks that it's going to be Manuel Margot, who I think the Mets are going to try to bring in center, who is a good defender in all three outfield positions, can't hit for shit at all.
Again, unless it's against the Mets.
Unless it's against the Mets. And even recently, he's kind of declined. I'm not saying that Margot is the guy to get, and I would not prioritize him whatsoever, even though if we were scraping the bottom of the barrel. But when you're talking about guys who can play defense, whether you're trying to replace Harrison Bader or whatever, I think there's going to be a trade for a center fielder. I don't think it's going to be the center fielder everybody wants.
No.
Like somebody like Luis Robert, who I think, Frank, you're kind of cutting him short in that regard because of the upside he has. And I do think that if you were to trade for Luis Robert, it's going to be the lowest value you could ever give up for him.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that like if you could get him for low value, sure, but I wouldn't try.
You also can think about the fact that Reinsdorf absolutely fucking hates us, and he'll probably ask for a lot more. But when it comes to the center field market right now, it's thin. It's led by Harrison Bader. He is the top among wins above replacement, with Cody Bellinger accepting his player option for 2025. So when you have Harrison Bader at the top, you know it's not going to be great coming towards the bottom. You have about 7 primary center fielders who are not great at all on the market. The top guy is Harrison Bader. So if you want to bring Harrison Bader back, by all means, because I think it would be great. Yeah, last year he was playing left field. But when it comes to the overall with center field, I do think that they're going to try and trade. I am kind of for like, I don't know, for overall lightning in the bottle reasons. I could see somebody like Jose Siri that they trade for. Like I think that they're in that market. They're gonna go in for those toolsy center fielders that have a little bit of the upside in the bat if they can tap into it. Jake Myers from Houston, who can't really hit that well either. They're gonna probably look defensively if they were to land somebody like Soto, Santander. Even if you go into the market of somebody like maybe even Jerickson Profar that you bring in, maybe. And even though he's more of a left fielder, can't play right field. If it's Teoscar Hernandez, again, that's another more bat than actual glove. So it definitely thins out when you get past some of these guys. But I think when you look at the outfield, if you're going to address it, either way, you're going to have to find a way to diminish the playing time of Marte, or I don't know. I don't know what we're going to be able to look at from that angle until we see what they're going to try to do. But it seems like there's going to be a lot of opportunistic pieces that they put on the line. There could be some center fielder that might be on the market eventually. Could there be somebody from St. Louis that they maybe go after for center field? Whether you're talking about, I don't know, Lars Nootbaar, whether it's Harrison Bader, he was in St. Louis. Is there an Dylan Carlson's kind of fallen off, and he's also gone, right? He's not in St. Louis anymore. He's in Tampa now.
Tampa, yeah. Who's somewhat fixed. Nobody still asked, but besides, I mean, I have my guy, which I know it fits a left-handed bat who can hit 20 homers, but is one of the best defensive center fielders in the game. Dalton Varsho could still be available. Pending UFA. Again, it ain't going to be sexy. I mean, it's not going to be sexy. That's again. He's making $8 million.
It isn't.
It's not gonna be like. No. Oh, what about Byron Buxton? Maybe the Twins move the money because they have no team. Like they're not gonna happen. Like you're looking at again, Varsho, Siri. The Cardinals aren't gonna move Nootbaar. It's gonna be a guy, especially you got Juan Soto, who can play left, right, and center field at one time, and that could be Varsho, Siri, Bader. Like that's what it is. I'd prefer Varsho because at least he hits 20 homers a year and is in the 100th percentile at everything defensively. Sure, but that's the only options you're kind of looking.
One guy I would kick the tires on. I doubt. It could happen because they don't give a shit. JJ Bleday is another one you could look at as a possibility from the two-way side. Probably the best of upside. What is he, 28, 27, something like that?
Probably around.
That's another guy you can look at. I don't think Lawrence Butler really plays center field in any regard. So, I think there's going to be some ways that they do look at it. Maybe it's somebody who we are not even discussing in any matter. I think, when it comes to like overall center field, I think it's more going to be addressed with defense as a priority, which it seems like is going to be something that is established with David Stearns for a long time. And you're going to look at some of these teams who are going to be looking to move some of these center fielders. We'll see what happens. Varsho is somebody you could put in that conversation. Siri, like I said, center field market's very thin. Like I said, Harrison Bader leading the charge.
Yeah, I would say my concern with Bader, amongst other things, is that when it comes to Taylor, like we don't know exactly when he would be back. But my thing is that like Bader lost his job to Taylor, and I still have Taylor. So why would I bring back Bader? You know what I mean? Like if the Mets have already established internally that Taylor's the better player, oh, there you go. We're just gonna go back with just running back with friendship.
Good locker room guy.
To do that. I mean. We'll see.
Well, it happened once. It'll happen again. That's what they say. So, that's what they say. It happened once to happen again. Because remember, Corbin Burnes was a Cy Young. He'll do it again. Willy Adames drove in 118 runs this year. He'll do it again. I think it's pretty easy to say it from Outliers. It's very easy. But when we had the vibes and all the magic, it'll happen again, right? I mean, just bring everybody back. I mean, it worked for 2022 Mets. Anyways, PCA would have been a good fit for this role. Listen, I don't like looking at it from hindsight here, but here's the thing. As someone who has as much room to grow and as young as he is, I think overall as a player, he kind of just sucks. I'm not going to lie. I really don't think PCA is that good. And I don't think it is even worth giving a young guy that. If you want to go with a center fielder that's established, we know that Kevin Kiermaier will be off the thing because he just retired.
Yep.
If you're going with some of the established center fielder, that's fine. Of somebody we know who can do that. But when it comes to PCA, I expect to have actual upside from the offensive side, which I don't see from PCA whatsoever. I see him as a defensive guy. And that's kind of how I see it from that view. And then you kind of bring into the formula of whether you're talking about a younger guy, Drew Gilbert, what does he provide? Where he can give you tools from the average to above average range from all aspects, nothing crazy, very high floor as a player, but also no major league experience. So then you're looking at it from who can actually push him in that regard, different regarding the outfield. But, when it comes to center field, it's definitely going to be something that is looked at, and I'm glad it will be. I feel like that's going to be one of the, if not the only trade that they do make this offseason. The only major league trade will be center field, maybe a reliever trade, like we've said before. We'll see what happens, but there are holes on this roster that do need to be, filled. They have the most free agents out of any team. And this is coming from a team that, lost in the National League Championship Series. So they have 17 free agents, 13 free agents on the major league roster. So it's we'll see what happens, but I just think it's something to look out for, where maybe it just comes out of nowhere. Cause I don't think anybody expected Tyrone Taylor to get traded to the Mets last offseason. And that ended up working out in the margins for them. And he definitely provided a lot. Wasn't perfect, but was definitely a valuable player to this team. Stuff that we have not really seen. It seems like they just go through the one-dimensional guys, and we got so much overall from, in spurts. Let's just say that, because Bader was a big contributor at the beginning. Taylor was great in the second half. They definitely showed depth this year. So hopefully they can repeat that the next year. And they're going to have to move some pieces around in regards to that, with the only 3 outfielders that are on the roster. Anything else you guys want to add regarding the outfield? Because I think that we do have some questions regarding the outfield that were asked in the chat. Again, Winker is another one that gets talked about again. Do you think the Mets get one player for DH, or do you resign Winker and get a righty bat to face lefties and share the DH role? Here's the thing. When it comes to the DH role, I do think that Winker is going to be considered to be brought back. But when it comes to a specific DH, I think they're either going to go with a DH platoon, bring Winker back, and maybe somebody that destroys lefties as the DH. Then I think that what they're going to do is, if they don't want to do the platoon, which we have kind of felt the need to move past, it's just going to be Mark Vientos as a majority of the DH that can hit lefties and righties. Because the lefties and righties DH, it's hard to come by. Let's be real for a second. There's no Yordan out there. JD Martinez is past whatever, the need is for that. David Ortiz retired years ago. He's already inducted into the Hall of Fame. So right now it's a very select few of DHs that can hit lefties and righties. Right now, the closest thing that you're looking at near the Mets, near the Mets' hands is Mark Vientos, who can hit both lefties and righties. But then you're also going to look at the corners on the infield. Do you bring back Alonso? Do you trust Ronnie Mauricio to stay healthy for opening day, which I don't? I don't even want to put a Beatty in the conversation, but he's still here, so we're going to see him play at some point. So we'll see what they look at. It all really matters as to where they are at. I think Pete Alonso is one of the main factors regarding the DH, not just because we think he's going to be the DH, but where they're going to place Vientos on the market, where they look at this internally. I don't know if there's anything else you guys would add to this DH conversation, because I think we've talked about it before. We know that they're going to see it as a need with JD Martinez being gone, as well as Winker going on the market as well. So they're going to bring in somewhat of a bat. We don't know how crucial it's going to be, but platoon, non-platoon, you do have the space to do it. But we'll see what happens. Let's just hope they don't just re-sign DJ Stewart and say, fuck it, Andrew, I'll go to you regarding this, because I think there's two different directions they can go with the DH, with being an extra bat that you could possibly add in the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, and I've been anti-platoon. I've been sick of the platoon, but I guess obviously you would love to add a stick. I see more Santana and Mateo as that. I just don't think they're going to do it. I think they potentially bring back Jesse Winker, and I think our worst fear is they're going to platoon Winker with the guy they can't move, and Starling Marte, and that's going to be your DH platoon with incorporating some other guys moving around. I just don't see them, until Marte's gone after the year, putting up, besides Juan Soto, again, Soto's different, I don't think they're going to put a B to C tier level outfielder. And yes, Santana, we love Anthony Santana, and he's a pure DH. If he's my DH, I'd love it because he's a switch hitter. He's both.
He's going to market himself as an outfielder. That's the problem.
For most teams here, they see him as a DH, but again, he's going to market himself. There are teams that, yes. But again, he's not going to get overpaid. That's my point, but I don't think the Mets are going $20 million for Santander. I think it's Soto or bust in the power outfield market. But I just think, again, they're going to go, maybe they upgrade Winker to a jock. I mean, I could see that, and then again Marte. But even that, I think somebody's going to stay out west, and I think he stays out west and gets paid somewhere else. I just don't see them going out unless David Stearns wants to go pure defensive at third base, like no bat, like we are in center field. Then shift Vientos. That's the only way, which I don't want. So I think the best way is they're going to try to keep Vientos at third if they bring Alonso back. And then the DH is either a Winker or a jock, potential type, platoon with Marte, because, again, you're not going to be able to move that contract because nobody's going to want him. I mean, he's in Japan. Maybe he just goes missing.
Well, here's one possibility, okay? And I don't see David Stearns going with this because of kind of what he got minimum from JD Martinez. There is a switch hitting DH out there right now who's a lot older than JD Martinez, but he's continued to be consistent throughout forever and continues to put up great numbers. Once again, 114 bat this year, 3-win season as a first baseman DH. Carlos Santana is another one that they could look at if they want to just, get a guy who can hit lefties and righties. I wouldn't recommend it because at any point he probably could drop. Let's be real for a second. We've seen it before. Guys have come off career years. They're still good. And then minimized to the worst when they come to the Mets. We saw that with JD Martinez. I'm saying that, when it comes to they don't want to do the DH platoon, I think the Vientos is just going to be in that look. I wouldn't put Marte in the DH position, but it's not my decision in that regard. I think when it comes to hitting both lefties and righties, their best bet is probably Mark Vientos, but investing in the infield is something that I would not do. So I personally, I don't know. I probably would go with the DH platoon, then address it at the trade deadline. But again, and then there's also the other thought of, this guy who, you know, Jock Peterson, I've been asking for years. And I think that he could still be giving you value against lefty-handed pitching, just not as much power. But I would go for it. That's another thing to look at. But we'll see in regards to how they look at this, because you're going to end up adding a bat, because you know that they are, because of, you know, of what happens in this offseason. Both of their DHs are going to free agency, not to mention the other backup DH and DJ Stewart. He's also on free agency and was granted free agency as well as a minor leaguer. So I think it's something to look at. They're going to address the DH. I don't know how they're going to do it. Hopefully it's not just Starling Marte, which I believe is just the worst nightmare. Explosive saying, I would love to sign Kikuchi. Andrew, I will go to you regarding Kikuchi. Anything with that sense?
I mean, Dana Brown gave up the haul at the deadline. I would be shocked if he's willing to overpay in prospects. I'd be shocked if he's not willing to overpay to keep him, and especially how good he was once he went to Houston. I talked about it in the video for in the Marte trade thing. They have so much damn pitching coming back off injured, kind of like how the Dodgers were. Like, the Dodgers have all these guys coming. So do the Astros, and they had their prospects in Hunter Brown and Andrew Grady step up massively. So, I mean, I could see him leaving for a higher bid, but again, it's kind of the similar market. It's going to be north of 22, because again, if Walk is setting the back end at 17, Kikuchi was better, so he's going to get more than that. So again, you're playing in that $20 million for, I think he's 32? How old's Kikuchi? 33? How old is he?
He's going to be 34.
He's past the age of 30.
34.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe it's a two. So call it 3 at 60. Maybe if that's being cheap. Let's say $20 million AAV. I mean, I like the talent. I just am not going to love the term for him.
Frank? Kikuchi?
Yeah, don't
Is he better than Taijuan Walker?
Right now, sure, but I just think given the age, and he still has the tendency for blowups. You know, I just feel like at any moment he could just kind of, I don't know. Again, I'm still looking at it from a playoff standpoint. It's like, do I feel comfortable making a playoff start? Some of them, but not all of them. And I just don't think you should go that way if you're going to be paying over $20 million for the guy. Like, you want him to be like, no, I know what I'm getting. But if you want to have it be like, okay, this is one of my 1-year deal guys this year, like the way it was last year, like this is this year's Manaea or this year's Severino, or one of the two, fine. But again, if the guy's turning 34, you should not really be looking at many multi-year deals there.
Which he will be. And when we look at it from the health standpoint, he's been healthy his entire major league career so far. 32 starts in 2019, 9 starts in 2020, shortened season, 29 starts in 2021. I think he did like some in and out of the bullpen, 32 appearances, 20 starts, 2023, 32, 2024, 32. So he is a mid-rotation type of guy you would like, to be healthy, gives you guaranteed 150 to 160 innings every single time, maybe even 170, which he gave last year that he passed that threshold. It's not the main guy I would be going after in mid-rotation style. I think Nathan Eovaldi is the main guy I would go for in regards to that. Even with that, even though I think he's a little bit higher on that ranking right now since he's a little bit younger, in Sean Manaea, who I would go after before I'd look at somebody like Kikuchi, because I do think as well Kikuchi is going to be looked at as more of a priority for the Astros, maybe even a bigger priority for the Astros than Alex Bregman would be as a potential free agent, which is weird to think about. I get it. But when you trade that haul for him, I mean, what they gave up for Kikuchi, we were thinking like, oh my goodness, Kikuchi's all right, but that's not what he's worth. He definitely proved his worth going over to the Astros and was one of their most consistent pitchers there. But like, I feel like they're going to try to, stay on it as much as they can. Project Ball, the last question we will answer here. What reclamation projects would you target? There is one reclamation project that is in our our video for tomorrow, which will come out, that we do not want them to target. And we're going to be talking about that one. And he also will be in the thumbnail of that video when it comes out. So you'll probably figure out who that is real quick. When it comes to reclamation projects, I feel like you're going to have to come with the expectation that the best they're going to be is a 5. When it comes to them overall, there are a lot, let's say, on this free agent market. You do have a deep free agent market for starting pitchers this year as compared to like last year. Last year was pretty low, I'm pretty sure. Like that was who was on the free agent market last year? It was like really it was low out there. Let's just say that. Once it got past like Yamamoto, and then Snell, and then Montgomery probably was like the third best.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to say because you need to find that sweet spot in age, and you need to find that sweet spot in upside. The Mets hit it on the head with guys like Severino and Minaya, who were in that pivot point of their career. Martin Perez maybe is someone to look at, but that's a 5. Spencer Turnbull is another one you could look at in his close to his mid 30s. Mike Soroka, I don't know. Like, you're digging into the deep ends of like guys who are not great. I do like Brad Keller, but he had an awful year last year. Who was the other one? Arcidi maybe is somebody who could be available because he's now, what did they decline his option? The Astros.
Yeah.
Anybody else we can put out there? Andrew?
I mean,
Adrian Hauser's a good one, I heard.
I mean, if you want to buy low on like a Justin Verlander, he might be looking for a cheap deal. I mean, if you wanted to go with the absolute biggest wild card, John Means is out there. I mean, that's interesting at buying nothing, and that's the biggest mystery box. I mean, again, I wouldn't say reclamation project, and a guy we talked about in the other video who we think is underrated targets, but we'll save that for the vid. Colin Ray, some people said Stearns and Ray might be an option because they've had that connection. He's out there. Again, then you're looking at 35, 36-year-olds. Like it's not a great. I mean, again, Rich Hill's still pitching for Team USA. That's a reclamation project. Get his little nice 90-year-old starter. But again, the most intriguing I'd say out there right now is it's not really just a bounce back. To be honest, it's more of just regarding health. Shane Bieber is probably the highest. That's probably what you're looking at. It's more, and then we get into the Bartolo Colon. I think he's done. I think he's hung it up. But you also have the factor of Shane Bieber, who has really struggled to stay healthy recently, had Tommy John surgery, has been out for a while, but when he has been on the field, he's been really good. He's 29 years old. He's in that pivot point where he still has something to still give.
Yeah, he's the ideal year guy. He's
definitely the ideal guy. And then there is, another guy out there who we do get a little bit more deep into with the video to do it justice. Corey Oswald, definitely, absolutely somebody I would consider. Lance Lynn, no thank you. Alex Cobb, a little too old. Kyle Hendricks already signed. I think there's some guys out there that pitched a lot better than they should have. Fetty already has another year with the White Sox. That was somebody I thought that they would trade for, but instead they opted for Blackburn. Anthony Zslafani is another one out there. Frankie Montas.
Well, no, I mean, maybe, of course, you had to get Tommy Edman and Cole Peg to go to the Dodgers for the Fetty deal. So I mean, why not? That was such a great trade for the White Sox. I mean, it was brilliant. Great idea.
Unbelievable. I mean, really, really just unbelievable how that happened. But, I mean, Trevor Williams is out there. Another guy we put out there. I don't know. Somebody can eat innings. But again, those reclamation projects, I don't think they're going to go as heavy as they did compared to this year. Andrew Heaney's another guy out there who's like, the definition of mediocre, but gives you innings. Who I basically just think is just the carbon copy of what we're getting from a guy like David Peterson, but different story.
What do you think Buehler's market is?
Well, Buehler, I think probably goes to somebody, another organization that would look at like more starting pitching and have been known to it. I'm not saying like directly Tampa, but Milwaukee, Cleveland, guys like that.
Yeah.
Robbie Ray would succeed at Citi Field, absolutely, but
to trade
I don't know how long that's gonna last. Let's just say that. And that contract he's still under, correct? He's still under that contract, I believe. Yeah.
And we'd like to watch the games and not have to have parental control on the game, just to be sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, we'll see. We'll see how they address that from the back end of the rotation. I do think that they're going to pursue some of the big arms. Let's just say that. Alex Cobb is a free agent coming off a tough year. He's getting up there in age, though. So we'll see what happens. You have a few of these pitchers that have qualifying offers attached to them. The Mets obviously gave it to Manaea, Severino as well. Nick Pivetta, who I love. Who I think also got the qualifying offer because he's pretty good. Nick Martinez got the qualifying offer as well, coming off a really good year and some really good years. Max Fried got the qualifying offer, of course. And then that, I think, is pretty much it for the pitchers that got the qualifying offer. Kyle Hendricks is already gone. He was the first pitching signing to go to the Angels. The Angels, they with their pitching, they always make some phenomenal signings. But overall, for this offseason, there still is plenty to talk about. Let's just say that there's going to be plenty of topics to discuss. We're just getting into the beginning of it. I think we're going to end off the episode here. I'll give some parting words to these guys. It's still very, very early, but as the stove gets hotter and hotter, closer to the winter meetings, there's going to be tons of stuff to talk about. We'll see what happens in regards to going live for that news. As for, when we do these big streams or whatever, we'll see how it all lines up. But we all know the Mets signing guys at very inconvenient times. So we'll see what happens. Frank, I'll go to you to wrap this thing up.
Yeah, I mean, really, like we said, we're just waiting for that stove to actually get cooking and just kind of see some big deals happen, not players just re-signing with teams they've already been with. Like, we want to actually see like something big go on. And again, that'll, like Andrew said, help set that market. I feel like is really the big key because everyone's just kind of waiting to see like, all right, well, what is everybody worth and what should we actually be offering players? So once those markets are actually set, then things should flow a lot easier. So it's just a matter of who's going to be that first big fish to be caught. And then, everyone else just kind of swim to where they're supposed to be.
Yeah. Speaking of water, Andrew, you have nothing to do with water. What's up? How you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I'm shocked Lindor was not nominated for MVP. I can't believe they put Marcell Ozuna over him. That was crazy. Of course, I'm kidding. I was waiting for it. But, yeah, again, we're waiting to see. We'll see the non-tender deadline next week. I'm more interested to see if there is any kind of maybe relief. I'm looking more basic relievers. Maybe, again, guys that we have as, the center fielders as well that maybe, because there was one of the guys in Houston that was brought up. There's also McCullers. What the hell is McCormick maybe could have been non-tendered, but Dana Brown said yes. We'll wait and see if that's actually true. So again, just what David Stearns does good. More of those end of the roster 40-man guys, non-tender candidates as well. But I don't think we're going to get this year's Bellinger or Schwarber. I don't see it. But again, let David Stearns continue to make waiver claims. And again, the GM meetings are happening, so we're already laying framework for trades that we'll hear about in 2 months or a month at the winter meetings. It all starts this week, so everyone just grab a Mountain Dew and just enjoy it. It's going to get crazy, it's going to get cold, but the stove's going to get hot.
Yeah, well, we're going to end it off here. Of course, many to come, of course, throughout the offseason. Make sure to look out for videos throughout the week. We have one going out tomorrow at 6:30, and then we have one going out on Thursday as well, probably the same time around there. Some more off-season content coming your guys' way, of course, with the podcast. Thank you guys so much for watching, listening. For those of you who enjoyed the hope you enjoyed the conversation. Hope you enjoyed chatting with us as well. For those of you watching and listening on playback, turn on those post notifications if you have not already. Subscribe to our channel as well. Follow us on X and on TikTok. Follow all of us individually. We have other content in the works as well. We're only doing these once a week now in the off season, Monday at 7 p.m. to start off. Probably not as long as these episodes, but we are just continuing the long conversation of tons of opportunities, tons of money coming off the books for the Mets. So we will see you guys next time. We're going to end it off here. Let's go Mets and make some moves. Let's get the train rolling. All right. Yay. Off-season baseball. We'll see you guys next time.